Agents. Skills. Show? Show us your agent skills. What are people at the top of the game building with AI agents, and how are they doing it? Are they Claudemaxxing with 8 terminals open at once, or adversarially testing Opus 4.7 generated code with Codex? Do they define suites and swarms of sub-agents, or use agents, markdown, and agent skills? We are on a mission to find out. All right. Welcome everybody to our special European edition of Show Us Your Agent Skills. If my wonderful guests can turn their cameras and microphones on. It is so great to be here with Matt Honnibal, Vincent Warmerdam, Eleanor Berger, and Ines Montani. Everyone say hi in Discord as well. I've put the link in the YouTube chat. We just chat there so we can continue the conversation afterwards. The obligatory welcome to Vanishing Gradients. Give us a like and subscribe if you like these things, and comment what you enjoy. If you don't enjoy such things, don't comment. It's that easy, supposedly. It's the internet. Also check out our Luma and Substack, and the GitHub repository for all of these things is in the YouTube description as well. But hey, Matt.
Hey.
Vincent, Eleanor, Ines, what's up, everyone?
Hey.
Hiya.
So great to have you all here. And we're actually going to start with Matt showing us some things. So I might give Matt a brief intro, and then we can jump in. So Matt originally hails from Sydney, computational linguist by training, now based in Berlin, Germany, been living there for a long time. The co-author of spaCy, NLP library, co-founder of Explosion with Ines, who's also on the call. Anything I missed out in that intro?
No, I think that's, it's all good.
Cool. And so something I also do is I've got an agent skill which creates 8-bit videos of guests, and usually it has them entering some form of video game, but because I didn't even realize Eurovision was last weekend, but I called this the Eurovision special because we used to have Eurovision parties growing up. Australia loved Eurovision so much, Europe finally accepted us as contestants, right?
I have no idea what the story is on that one, but yes, I am
that's
aware that
pretty
Australia
much
was part of it.
What happened?
I think this is, part of the Australian, cultural heritage of just, showing up and expecting to be accepted and seeing what happens. So Australia showed up at the doorstep, and Europe was like, oh, well, I guess.
And finally being either so charming and or obnoxious that you finally get accepted in one way or another. So Matt, this is a video made by C-Dance.
Industrial strength, natural language processing in Python.
Oh no.
So
okay, I could have done without the.
And I know Ines has to leave at some point, so I did create one for her as well. And
the AI revolution will not be monopolized. How open source beats economies of scale, even for LLE.
I love that it slopped around LLM to LLE. It did so well until the very end.
I can't decide whether it's too cringe or cringe enough that it slapped around to be acceptable again.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to say, but we'll have to let the internet decide on that one.
Yep.
Just everyone who's joining and everyone here, please introduce yourself in Discord and let us know what you're up to, what your interest in such stuff is. Been using Python for some time, working data, ML, or just interested in using agents. So I ask every guest just a few questions to get started. So Matt, I'm wondering first, what's the thing you love most about working with agents?
So I guess I think velocity is very important in programming, and this is one of the pressures that actually in development gets people to work longer, and it's one of the answers to the puzzle of software engineers have such a sweet ride in lots of ways. So how come there's a lot of pressure to actually put in a lot of hours and get things done quickly? One of the answers to that, I think, is that things get a lot easier if you're doing them on a more compressed timeline, and you're less often losing state. So the ability to basically just move faster and get your work through problems and have the steps which are less interesting take less time, I think is very valuable in itself. And so you get a compounding effect from velocity in this way if you're doing it well. There's challenges, of course, but just that experience of feeling like you're getting to the more interesting parts and working through the less interesting parts more quickly, I find very good.
I love that. And you said something key in there with if you're doing it well or doing it correctly, because you can seem to have velocity and go in a lot of different directions as well. I am then wondering, what is the most frustrating thing you find about working with agents?
So I definitely wouldn't say that I have all the answers and the optimal workflow for this. I find it's one of the challenges that I am very often feeling is it's extremely hard to make decisions about how to do things because you're in such a poverty of evidence around it, and things are changing underneath you all the time, and what you're doing is changing all the time. So it's very difficult to know whether this way is actually performing better than this other way. So let's say some method of using the agent or like some prompt technique or something like that would on average improve your performance by 10% on these things. How are you going to get enough sample to actually tell that? Or if it's going to harm performance by 15%, you're not going to have sample to tell that reliably, especially since even measuring performance, we don't have a good thing. So it's all very eyeballed. And so I find it extremely hard to, know what to do with these things, especially when I think, it's impossible that Anthropic, for instance, are evaluating everything that they're doing because, no matter how much money they have, at the velocity that they're moving, you can't, hire 9 women to have a baby in 1 month. So the time that it takes to actually do the user studies that it would require to know these things reliably, it's impossible that they could be doing that because the number of things that they would have to be testing and the length of those tests, the time just doesn't add up. So they're making it up as they're going along, and we're all making it up as we go along using the things. And that makes it really tough. So using Claude, when things just start working less well, when, then obviously there's outages and, just unreliability from the platform as well, that compounds the uncertainty that on your side with how you're trying to, resolve your workflow and optimize your workflow. And this can be kind of discouraging because it's very difficult to feel like sometimes you're, it doesn't feel like you're actually making progress in, figuring this out and improving how you're using things.
I really appreciate that and agree. And it is kind of an important flip side to the velocity that you mentioned. Sorry, Ines.
Also for the more practical pitfalls, I know Matt has a good blog post on mistakes and problems you might run into when working with Python and how to mitigate them, especially for developers that are a bit more new to the field.
Yeah.
So we can link that later in the repo.
For sure, there's I can talk a lot about the concrete mistakes that I think agents make in Python code. But the question is, okay, that's the tool. And the question is, how do we best use it and how do we best mitigate those problems? So, one school of thought with that is, well, you front load things into the prompt and memories and stuff that tell it not to make those mistakes. And my opinion at the moment is that that's a less effective way to go about things than having multiple passes. But, is that actually true? Like, you know, you have to do a proper study of this, and then by the time you've done the study, the model's changed underneath you to, you know, kind of invalidate that. So there's definitely concrete things where I'm like, okay, these are the things that I worry about in the code. But the question is, how do we actually, you know, mitigate those things? And I have, you know, my eyeballed opinion on that, but I can't say for certainty that, like, well, this is the evidence that I have behind that. I'm making eyeballed opinions just as everybody else is, just as the Claude team is, and I find that challenging for sure.
For sure. Well, why don't we jump in? And Matt, if maybe you just hold your mic, or because when it rubs against your shirt,
sorry.
we get
Yep.
not at all. And while you're sharing your screen, Nico from AMP and SourceGraph is joining later, and they wrote a blog post called, you know, "Coding Agents Are Dead," and of course they meant that in a hyperbolic sense because they build coding agents, right? But part of the point there was that they had to change everything because of how models are sucking up everything, all the harnesses people are building around them. So do you want to jump in and show us some of your workflows?
Sure. So let's see. So what's the best way to do this? I can go to a terminal and just show you like some of the skill prompts, but I don't use that many skills. And I could show you the repo of you know, a few skills that I built. Maybe that's actually the best way to do it.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to just be skills. It can be workflows or how you work with agents.
Yep. Okay. All right.
And on that note, there's I think also something Matt can show of some of our latest work, because we've not only been using agents, we've also been building things for developers with agents and making coding agents proficient at NLP. So that's kind of takes it a bit to the meta level.
Yeah. So this is a repo of some stuff that I uploaded. This actually highlights even just the way that I've done this, I think highlights a few concerns that I have with how things work with agents. So to start with, I've uploaded these as a repo of .md.txt files instead of using like the skills.to repo or something. So why did I do that? Like why are they like this? Well, one of the problems that we have with skills at the moment is actually that they didn't make any effort to do even the basic things around some security. So when Claude reads these skills, you can actually have HTML comments within the skill file, and when you render the markdown version of that skill, that text will be invisible to you. So if you go to like a skills repository, you can be reading the rendered markdown of it, and there's hidden instructions in the skill that you don't see. So it's discouraging that they didn't even bother in the specification to strip HTML comments or reject skills with HTML comments. And I've opened an issue with that, but they just don't reply to these things. So that's something which already with skills and with like the sharing of skills, I think it's, there's these difficulties around it. So that's why I've shared them this way, so that, people actually at the moment need to read the raw text. You shouldn't install skills where you've only read the rendered markdown of it. So all of these things are prompts that ask Claude to do some operation over the code base. And my mindset with this is that rather for style problems and for problems in the code, rather than trying to get Claude to get to one-shot things, I think of it more in terms of multiple passes. So I like to use the analogy of, byte versus nibble for this. You can try to get it to make one big byte and try to put everything into the context at once, or you can try to get it to nibble and to maneuver the space and to try to, make multiple passes over things. And I think the nibble strategy is more powerful because I don't think it's realistic to get it to, do everything right the first time. Fundamentally, reasoning isn't free. You can't expect the model to know everything that it knows all up front. You have to. That's not the way that we work. It's not the way that anything works. You can't just expect that inference just sort of happens magically. You have to go from one intermediate result to the next intermediate result. So This skill, for instance, is about asking it to, look at the code and try to introduce problems, and then see whether the current tests catch them. So this is that's one operation that I run over the code. Another operation that I run over the code is something like this. So you say you're now in pre-mortem mode. Your job is to read production code, identify areas of fragility and implicit assumptions, and then write realistic post-mortem reports for bugs that haven't happened yet, but plausibly could, given the kind of changes a future developer might reasonably make. It's not a bug hunt. The code may be perfectly correct today. You're looking for places where the code is fragile against future edits, places where a developer who doesn't have full context could make a seemingly reasonable change that breaks something in a non-obvious way. So, and then, another one is around, try accept usage. There's something like this. You're now in try except audit mode. Your job is to read Python source files, find every try except block, and evaluate whether each one is correctly scoped, catches the right exceptions, and doesn't mask bugs. So I've got a blog post about the try except usage in Python. I think it's one of the most the biggest problems that Claude introduces in code. I think that this is actually due to reward hacking, where during training there's a low penalty on introducing maintainability problems, because you can only have a limited horizon on the reinforcement learning, and so one of the ways that it can kind of cheat the long-term objective in order for the short-term gain is to introduce bare accepts and things, because maybe if the code exits with a 0, the LLM judge that's going to reward the coding agent will be tricked. Similarly, with the various ways that it will lie to you in the chat about whether it's successful or not. All of those things, I think, are evidence of it having managed to trick the rewarder, whether that's an LLM judge or a human judge. If it's able to do that, then it gets a reward, and so it'll try to trick you in the same way when you're on the other side of it, and that's also why it's quite good at tricking you in a lot of these cases. So what I try to do is basically I tell it to do a thing, it does it, and then rather than at each code block trying to either prevent it from introducing the problems or trying to correct every little thing at once, I do these passes and then have these fix-up passes where I'm saying, all right, now's the time where we tighten the try accepts, now's the time where we tighten the types, etc. And that's how I go about things with the coding. Then what I'm actually doing with these things is building something that helps people work with data projects. So we can talk about that as well, and how I think that these flows have problems with data projects, and what we've been doing about that. But I guess I'll pause here to talk about the raw Python coding side.
Can I ask a quick question? Mm-hmm. Because one thing I noticed, all of these files are 3 months old, and you haven't made changes to them since. So that should are you changing this, or have you not found a need to change this? Because 3 months is a bit long, right? That's interesting.
Yeah, that's true. So some of these are a little bit out of date. I actually, this is another thing that I've these small changes to these skills and stuff, I don't know how to evaluate that. And so I got them to a point where they're, apparently good enough. And then I run the process and it does what I've, been expecting. So I don't have a way to make small optimizations to these. And so instead I kind of change my workflow around them. So I wouldn't say that they're necessarily optimal, but I, say something about like changing the wording within this. I don't, it's
Well, the question was more along the lines of you've also not felt the need to add a skill, let's say. So that suggests that you've got like a collection of tools that is like pretty set in time at this point. Like you haven't felt the need to change this in 3 months' time. Not even making small changes in the files, but also not add a tool or remove one.
Yeah. So one of the things that's happened over the last, so this also comes down to just like the flow of what I've been doing over different times. So over the last like, sort of month or two, I've been in a lot of debugging mode. So we've been getting something ready for launch, and so there's been a lot more operational work, and a lot more, okay, do a thing, then these debugging loops. And I haven't been adding new tools around that. There's actually some stuff that I've done that hasn't made it into this repo that I can talk about as well. But the other thing over the last 2 months, the context window increased a lot, and I've been experimenting with having longer sessions, and that's actually something which I want to go back to not doing that because I feel like it's been less successful. If we go back about, there was a period where Claude started to perform worse for me, and then I wasn't developing new skills around that. I was kind of trying to adjust to that, and then within that period as well, I've just been doing different types of work.
How far
that would
can
be
you
why.
get with Claude? I mean, at the moment, like effective context window, I find with Claude Code, like after 150,000 or 200,000 tokens, like it kind of can get pretty dumb for me for the stuff I do.
Yeah, so this is something where I find myself sometimes in sessions where I realize I've been less effective with it, and I should have been more engaged and trimmed the context and stuff. So this is something where I sometimes end up in a sort of failure mode where I've got something on in the background and I'm less engaged with it, and I'm doing other things and tasks swapping to it, and
Totally.
these are bad sessions. Like they're not like I'm not using myself well, and I notice like one of the things that I think about with this is I've I've got, I think it's like 20 years of experience as an engineer now, and I've built a lot of stuff. I'm fairly fluent with code, and I think about, all right, if I've had a session with this where I really haven't used all of that, and I've basically been as effective as anybody would have been with this, that's something that I see as a concern. So if I'm like, if it's some evening session where I'm like, watching TV or something, and in the background, just like, like getting it to do things, and then like, finding myself annoyed when it hasn't done it well or something like that. These are bad usage patterns. And I find myself trapped into that more than I would like. And so that's something where those are the sessions where the context length gets longer. Because it takes sort of active effort to think it through and to say, all right, to cut things up into shorter tasks and to take more agency with it. So I think a healthy pattern is a shorter context length like that, yeah.
I can relate to how I interact in given sessions because I've just put the wrong link in Discord. It was relevant, and I'll find it later. But like, if Claude bamboozles for 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to start like thinking about other things and try to start doing other things and coming back, and my attention does get split in a variety of ways. I was actually trying to link to this app called GitFit, which Eric Ma shared with me, and it's something which it will tell when your agent is spending a bit of time doing stuff, and you'll have a routine where it'll tell you to do like 5 push-ups or something along those lines. So it's half in jest, but figuring out, healthy and productive habits around while we're working with agents and waiting a bit of time for them to do stuff.
Yeah.
I am interested because Eleanor's going to start showing stuff in 5 to 10 minutes. If there's anything on the data or NLP side you wanted to share with us.
Yeah. So this is, I think it's also, useful to talk about. Let me just change the share. I think it's also worth talking about what somebody's actually building with these things. as context, and it's an agent thingy in itself. So basically, what we're building, and we've got it in beta now, is this tool that lets people use Claude and an extension skills with that for NLP projects. So this includes a compute platform behind it. So it helps you set up a Kubernetes cluster on your desktop or on a cloud service, and that gives you this sort of compute backend. So for natural language processing projects or data projects, it's not just developing the code. There's a lot of running code steps in between. So let's say you need to an example project that we're working through is, let's say we want to monitor mentions of the word spaCy on Twitter or Blue Sky to detect whether it's about our library or about the motorcycle Honda spaCy. All right, well, how do you build something like that? You can, in theory, just have a prompt that asks Claude, hey, do this, but then you have to pipe every tweet into Claude, and that's not something that you're going to want to do. So it is a pretty easy task. You want to build a classifier for this. And this is exactly the sort of thing where we called it software 2.0 when ML was first coming up, right? Like, if we've got a need for a certain type of program. How do we build that program? Well, we got to a certain point in teaching people how to build that sort of program. But now we need to get to that point of getting LLM agents to build that sort of program. And so this involves, you might say, all right, here's the plan for it. The agent will help you plan out all of the steps for it, and then it'll help you run those steps. So it'll say, all right, we need to download a bunch of data. So it'll, run that on your cluster. It will say, okay, let's do some initial annotation of these things. You can farm that annotation out to inexpensive agents like, Gemini Flash or something, and then do some annotation yourself. You can also easily tell it to do workflows where, hey, create 3 annotation tasks, then set up a review task where I'll review the disagreements where 2 out of 3 agents disagree with the third agent. And so using this, you could say, all right, we'll get some training data, then we'll run some experiments, and the agent will guide you through all of the different steps of that. So that's the thing that I've been building with this, and the steps of this have it's been quite satisfying. We've found that actually this is a thing that broadly this platform was something that we were working on even before agents. We didn't have the agent layer to it, but the computational backend of, hey, how do you get people to organize their NLP projects? We were working on this before, and we've actually found that agents have really enabled us to be as productive as we were with a much larger team. So it's definitely something where we've been very successful in building software with agents, and we're finding the experience of setting up an agent platform to be interesting in itself as well. We don't want this like extremely high autonomy concept. Like, that's not something that we're targeting with this. But having a developer in the loop flow and guiding people through tasks, that's the sort of way that we're thinking about this. So anyway, if it seems like something interesting that you want to check out, there's a wait list. We're looking for partner projects with this, where we help you build the thing that you need built at the moment. And we're looking forward to sharing this with more people.
I'm really excited about that. What's the URL so I can put it in Discord?
Oh, I thought that was visible. No. So beta.elf.ai, where elf is ELLF, which roughly stands for Explosion Large Language Thing.
Super cool. Someone has already put it there. Fantastic.
Great.
What were the biggest challenges you had when building this? Or I don't even know if you want to show us some of the things you used to build it, or anything that's public as well.
Well, I mean, we, of course, use, I think Claude Code is the main thing that we use to build it. And then just in terms of like technologies, we use Kubernetes and things. I think it's always difficult the agent works most easily when you're doing stuff that you know how to do. And it's so interesting because it's so seductive when you're doing things that you don't know well. So, for instance, I didn't know Kubernetes well when I was doing this, and it feels great, right? Because you're, it's giving you all of these answers, but it sucks when the answers are wrong and you don't know about them. Whereas, when I'm doing stuff that I know how to do, I very immediately catch problems. So that's one of the tensions with it. But yeah, we were able to manipulate a lot more code a lot more quickly than we were before.
I am interested.
Yeah, sorry, go.
If it's something that you don't know a lot about, but it seems proficient in, and this speaks to your point about being able to evaluate what agents are building, right? Like with Kubernetes, for example, I would presume there's enough training data. I don't know enough about Kubernetes myself, right? But how did you even think about evaluating whether it had done the Kubernetes stuff correctly?
Oh, well, so there's sanity checks where you're one of the things that I think about a lot is getting it to probing its reasoning. So that's something that I do a lot in the sessions. So when it's saying things, I ask it questions about how it knows or why it's done things this way or that way, and the reasoning is something that's much easier to evaluate than the conclusion. And so that's something that comes up, and it comes up a lot in debugging. So when it's debugging things, I'll very often ask it to identify the lines of code that introduce the change. Or I'll ask it, why did this work? Why exactly was this working yesterday but not today? And that's something that it's interesting. These are general skills actually that I thought about a lot even before working with agents of evaluating whether something is true or not, rather than just sort of taking it for granted. And it comes up a lot with agents, but still, if you don't know the domain as well, then you'll be slower in catching problems. So you'll have this kind of flip-flopping where it's orbited around a result or reintroduce changes and stuff, and that's frustrating.
The other thing, I think asking questions like that makes sense. There are questions to ask it about the past or its reasoning that it seems they'll just retcon. They'll just make stuff up that sounds plausible, right?
Well, yeah, but you called it on that, and eventually you pin it down. And then you can either exit the session then and start a new one with what you've learned, or just you end up with enough information to resolve the problem. But if you pin it down and you do call it out successfully, then you do make progress with these things.
So I wonder, Eleanor, if you're around, because this seems like a wonderful segue into all the things you work on and think about.
Yeah, sure. I think it's really interesting, kind of the point you raised about validation and verification. That's something I've been thinking about a lot. There is this problem, you can't get AI validating AI. There's this infinite regress where you could get stuck in some kind of local minimum and you never get out of it. So I'm thinking a lot about, how do you reintroduce certainty and disambiguity so that the agents can work safely? Actually, I'm doing, as part of my new day job, I'm doing a lot of this kind of cloud infrastructure stuff now. Luckily not with Kubernetes, but very similar systems. And one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is, okay, I'd like to get the agent to work on it. It's really boring work, not where any of us add a lot of value. So it would be great to delegate it, but I have to have this certainty. What I find is that in something like Kubernetes or anything that kind of has meaningful artifacts like this, I need to see what it did. The verification is not getting an AI to look at the YAML files. The verification is to look at what happens when you run these YAML files and realize the cloud footprint, and is it exactly what we expect? And anything other than that is not good enough. And so the more we're able to orchestrate these systems. In the case of Kubernetes or something, you can quite cheaply tell it like, okay, go ahead and actually realize this configuration and sample what it actually created. That's something I can trust. When I have this, I'm good to let the agent take control over it. If it were only like now do another AI review and then do an AI review of the AI review, and that's not something I can trust.
I appreciate all of that. And for those joining now, I'd love to just introduce Eleanor. Eleanor is an AI and software engineering expert, technical member of staff at Jiminy Health. Congrats on the new job. How recent is that, Eleanor?
Yeah, it's very recent. It's one of these things that happened so fast. I know some people there, and we started talking, and we're going to do something together. And it very quickly became clear that, yeah, this amazing group of people doing really important work in AI for mental health, and then I should just join. And so I did, and the last few weeks I've been very deep in it and having a lot of fun, and yeah, very cool new adventure for me.
Amazing. Well, Eleanor is also the creator of Agentic Ventures, where she writes and teaches what she's been calling, and we've been calling an AI coding course, but it feels a lot more than AI coding these days, right? It's AI, it's agentic engineering, it's building software with agents, and I've learned a huge amount from. I've taken your course several times. Eleanor also was formerly a principal engineering lead at Microsoft and Google. She helps engineers, power users, and teams build practical AI capability that's technically rigorous, grounded in results, and free of hype, which is something I very much appreciate about you, Eleanor. So maybe we can jump in. And the usual questions we ask: what do you love about working with agents?
Well, I think one thing that I think Matthew also mentioned is just to speed up the velocity. I tend to be very impatient to the extent that it's almost like a filter. If something can't happen fast, I might just not do it, not bother. And there are a lot of things that in the past you could do, but it would just take so much time that I deprioritize them. But now with agents, I just fire something off and it goes and does it. The other thing is that it kind of rounds up my capabilities. There are a lot of things that I know how to do well enough, or I roughly know what to look for and what's interesting, but I'm not proficient at it. I don't have the syntax in my fingertips and all of that. And I find that there it works really well, because if I have no idea what I'm doing, it's difficult for me. I don't think agents help me very much. But if I know a little bit of what I'm doing, enough to have the confidence that I understand what it did and how to evaluate it, all of a sudden I got this exoskeleton. I can like move so fast, do things that would be very effortful. So that I really love.
And what do you find most frustrating about working with agents?
Something very specific that I'm running into now a lot. I think agents get really good at understanding and interpreting intent, and they're still not very good at understanding scope. So what I find happening is if I say what it is I want clearly enough, it usually gets it right. But then it would do a lot less or a lot more than what I actually wanted. Like I wanted just like a one-pager, but it wrote a novel. Or I wanted a comprehensive review, but it wrote a paragraph, and that's not very helpful. And I find that I keep running into this. That's something that needs to be solved. Maybe a little bit with skills in my own customization, maybe also something that can be, at the system prompt level or even in the training will improve.
Yeah, I find that as well. And I mean, even in most of my agents.mds, when I'm starting off, it's like, do not write tests, do not do this. This is exploratory and so on, right? I hadn't used ChatGPT for quite a while, and I went back the other day, and I ask a simple question. It doesn't give me paragraphs. It just gives me bullets, like, and then things in between. And it just scrolls through it. I'm like, hey, whoa, I can't read all of that. It's like, okay, I won't do that. And then it just keeps on doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I find that sometimes I just need to tell it like, this needs to be 500 tokens or less. Like you need to give something concrete. Otherwise it just kind of, it will go on and on and on.
Without a doubt. And also, I mean, actually in the course that I taught, that we're not going to teach again for a while, an example of looking at different models we always gave is if you go to the major frontier applications and say, I have a headache, tell me what to do. ChatGPT and the API will like ask you, 10 follow-up questions. How painful is it? When did it start? And it's the last thing you want when you have a headache is to have all of these, right? Gemini was a bit better. Claude was slightly better, but context-specific responses and lengths I think is important.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'd love to jump in and see what you'd like to show us today, Eleanor.
Sure. What I'd like to do is something a little bit different in that, so in a lot of my previous work and in my teaching, I've been treating agents and skills as, I've been kind of quite pedantic, treating skills like a software package that I'll kind of manage very carefully and sort of version and all of that. And I still think that's important for a lot of my more serious work. That's still how I approach it. But I'm having right now this moment, which I think many people already had and many people are going to go through, where I let go. And the thing that changed it for me is Hermes. So I'm not taking a side. I know lots of people like OpenClaw, and there's now a little bit this rivalry, which is, it's great that there are multiple projects and they're both really cool projects. For me, it somehow happened with Hermes, if only because I waited long enough. I think I tried OpenClaw when it was still very early, and I didn't think that's something I'm going to use. And then a few weeks ago, I installed Hermes, and then it clicked. And so everything I'm going to show today and a lot of what's new and interesting to me is this YOLO approach of letting an agent just sort of roam free. I don't let it near, a lot of my work stuff and things that really matter, not yet. But I have to say that I've been impressed with its ability to monitor itself and make good decisions on where it needs my approval. And it will actually ask me for approval, a little bit like Claude auto mode.
And where does your Hermes agent live?
So my Hermes agent lives here on a Mac Mini that I have.
Very good. I'm very, very glad to hear it's a Mac Mini.
Yeah, it's very old. It's like an M1 Mac Mini that was lying around, and I figured I can repurpose it. It's kind of not, I don't really like. Usually, I like running things in the cloud, but I found that it's really good to have a desktop environment. I suppose you can do this in the cloud too with like a frame buffer or something, but it's also good to have a GPU because I like to index things. And somehow it's really easy to get a CPU machine in the cloud. And if you want a GPU machine in the cloud, it's getting a lot more expensive. So I figured, okay, I can just the Mac Mini has a very minimal GPU, which is enough for me to do a little bit of embedding locally and stuff like that. And I'm connecting to it on Tailscale. It's a little bit kind of segregated.
And you're one of several people who I've heard from that a few weeks ago that GPT 5.5 was a real unlock for Hermes.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's a really good model. I think they kind of solved, okay, I don't know the exact details, but it looks like for a very long time they've been over-reliant on reasoning with the base model not being strong enough. And that was a bit frustrating. You could get really good results, but it would take a long time and it had like not a great personality or whatever. And it looks like with 5.5, they've finally overcome this and it's just an amazing model. I'm using it almost exclusively now either in Codex app or in Hermes or in VS Code or whatever.
Super cool. And of course, there's the irony that, in the agent competitive landscape or agent wars, or that it's GPT 5.5 that unlocks Hermes for a lot of people after acquiring, quote unquote, acquiring OpenClaw in some sense. I know OpenClaw is far bigger than, but should we jump in and see what you're up to with your Hermes agent?
Yeah, sure. So I have lots of different ways of talking to this agent. I especially like Discord. That somehow the Discord integration is really good, and it's kind of very responsive, and it gives you can manage stuff in threads. So I do a lot there, but I will also show you other ways I'm talking to it. The first thing I did here, just as we were getting ready to talk, so like, I don't know, 10 minutes ago, I told it, you know what, I'd like to present you, so create like a nice presentation for me. And so I thought we can start with that, and through that I'll show you a few kind of just simple, cheap tricks that I'm using. So it went ahead and researched and created something, and it published it to Here Now. I don't know if people here know Here Now. It's this new, really, really cool service for, it's kind of like gists, but for HTML. And I find that I'm doing a lot of HTML generation these days, and I had some weird tricks where I published them to GitHub pages. I was very happy that someone is taking this job off me, and I have a skill for that, of course. I'll show you in a moment. It's very easy to get the agent to just publish HTML pages, which I do all the time. So here is what my agent created when I asked it to introduce itself. And it's it's called Fnord. If you like Discordian mythology, you might enjoy this. If not, it's just a name. It has 157 skills and a bunch of scheduled jobs and parallel child agents working. It uses GPT 5.5. It uses Discord now, but there's also WhatsApp and other things. Nice. What does it say about skills? Oh, it categorized the skills and listed all of them. So this is nice. All I did, just to show you again, the prompt is, I literally said here, I want to present this Hermes instance to the audience, create a cool interactive web page. So that's all I did here. So very YOLO, and it kind of looks like it did some interesting, useful things here. Have a bunch of scheduled jobs working in the background. One thing I really like with Hermes, I don't know how it is these days with OpenClaw, but it used to be that every job would engage the LLM, which is really wasteful if you have something running every 5 minutes making a call to the LLM. And Hermes is quite good at knowing in what cases it can just create a script and do without an LLM, which for me is in many cases. So it's quite efficient. And it has, these different memory files that it keeps. What is the setup? We have Discord and WhatsApp and CLI and API server. So basically it created a nice presentation that I like. What's interesting here, and I'll jump into the Hermes web UI, which I really like using. This is not part of the Hermes project, but another community project to give it a neat web UI, is to look at some of the skills I've used for that, to be able to get so much done in a little request. One thing I'm using, so Here Now, as I said, I really recommend checking it out. You get a lot of, like, I think a few hundred pages you can publish for free, and if you sign up you get even more, and all kind of nice features. And I have a skill for that, and so now I just tell it, do a web page, publish it to Here Now. Sometimes I won't tell it and it will still publish it there because it knows from my configuration that is what I expect. And so I create a lot of HTML pages, like dozens every day, because just every little thing that I do, it's so easy to tell it do. Oh, and here you see it's running in the background, syncing to my Anki collection. So I'm a little bit, I like revising lots of flashcards every day, which is a bit weird. And now I can manage them with my agent, and cron jobs for that. Here now is one thing. The other one is Impeccable. I really love Impeccable. I don't know if people know it already. It's a nice skill for design. Impeccable style. I'm terrible at design. I'm good at whatever. Give me server farms, data sets, whatever, terminals. That works very well for me. I know absolutely nothing about design. But now, thanks to various skills, I can actually do things that look not too bad. The one I use a lot is Impeccable. I recommend checking it out if you need help with design. I know that there are some new things. There's now Open Design, which looks really cool. Kind of trying to do an implementation of like an open implementation of something like Claude Design. There are others. There's now a new one from Google. I'm sure they're all good. So it's worth finding something and then customizing it a little bit, giving it, in my case, sort of instructions for the style I like, which is generally dark mode and other things. So that's something that I've used here. Just being able to do that already.
Scroll down so we can just see how long it is. Yeah, okay.
Oh, Impeccable is huge. They have, like, you can, if you look at the skill, they have all these things here, like how to optimize, and it's quite an elaborate process where it will sort of set up the design guidelines and then follow them iteratively. But I don't actually know anything about how that's done. I just benefit from the fact that someone developed it.
And let me ask, and this question's slightly tongue-in-cheek, but not really, because I can relate to feeling like I'm not great at design. But how do you evaluate whether design's good or not?
I look at it like I'm the main customer.
So you trust your taste. You don't trust your ability to tell a system how to create that.
Yeah, that's exactly. If I look at it and it's like, it's legible to me, it looks nice to interact with, I'm good with that. It's just I wouldn't know how to instruct an agent how to do it, like what font you should use and how should the distance between the different elements. I have no idea about these things.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So yeah, these are two skills that are worth knowing about. Some other things. There was this thing, Hugo, that you liked. So one thing I realized is I have this habit that I collect a lot of things to read and watch. I have, like, in my YouTube watch later, I always accumulate this ever-growing list of videos. I'm never going to have the time to watch all of them because it's just not enough time. And I realized it would be good to have kind of summaries of what's in these videos, so I can look quickly and decide, like, is this something I'm going to invest now an hour in, or maybe it's just good to know that it's there. And like a lot of these things with Hermes, I did it, I think, like, I was on public transport and chatting with my phone, because then that's when I have time for these little games. And I told it, I want you to regularly use your browser, because YouTube unfortunately doesn't have an API, so it's good that it has access to a live browser with my YouTube logged in, and collect everything that's in my watch later and create summaries for it. And so now I can tell it something like, what's on my YouTube watch later, and it will answer me, hopefully. And the way it's implemented, we can look meanwhile. So these are all skills that I didn't write myself, right? I just asked and watch later cache. You can even see from the wording when it says use this whenever Eleanor asks. I would never refer to myself in the third person, but it's just I asked very briefly in the chat and it invented this way to do it and it did a pretty good job. Realizing it will have a script doing this and it will maintain like a cache of the things it already did, a very sophisticated behavior that I didn't really define myself. And it created the skill for me.
This is fascinating. I am interested, I mean, to Matt's concern, very valid concern, which I know we've talked about before, Eleanor, live, publicly and privately, but about security, and just like the fact of just using skills and what they may include in them. Because one concern Matt had was that it can have HTML, which isn't necessarily rendered to humans, so we don't even see it in the skill. In this case, and the same with my OpenClaw, it's downloading skills I may not even see. So I wonder maybe if you could remind us about Simon Willison's lethal trifecta, what that is, and how you think about it with respect to your Hermes agent.
Yeah, I mean, it's very insecure. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of segregated on my community. There's something, my personal stuff, I realized I feel confident enough now to let it go. Part of the functionality it has is its own kind of auto-evaluator. I started with having it ask me for permission for everything, and with time I kind of gave it a bit more rope. I'm not letting it go near anything that's like my day job now. I work with very sensitive clinical data. Don't think anytime soon I'll be okay with it getting close to that. I think it got a lot better. So clearly the models are improving. We can trust them more, but it will never be 100%, right? This little trifecta, the idea that if you are getting instructions from the internet and you have connections out to the internet, basically you should assume that you are completely exposed. There's no way around it.
You're absolutely right. And I'll share this blog post in a second on the Discord, but the lethal trifecta is 1, access to private data, 2, ability to externally communicate, and 3, exposure to untrusted content. So if my agent brings in skills, has access to my private data, and then can communicate externally. So I actually did as much as possible to limit the ability of my agent to communicate, to have right to the internet access, essentially. Not foolproof, but...
Yep. Can I jump in with one thing I forgot to mention with this as well? It's a little bit frustrating because they've actually nerfed one of the things that I was trying to do with this, which was try to write scripts that actually do some deterministic work, prepare like some small unit of work that requires a little bit of intelligence, and then just get the agent to do that bit and then move on to more deterministic stuff. So an example is, let's say I want to draft release notes for a release of spaCy. I absolutely do not want to give an agent, just push access to spaCy, right? Like that's not something that I want it to have or want it to have even in my terminal. So I actually have my Git set up where the Git that I have in my terminal doesn't have push access, and I need to do sudo git w to actually push. And so that script fetches the token, and then in order to push, I have to use sudo. And so for the release notes task, I have some script that gets everything together for that, runs Claude-P with just the task, hey, draft release notes, and then the deterministic script takes over and actually uploads these things. But now they're nerfing Claude-P because they don't want to sort of abuse tokens, and you can't use your subscription tokens for that. So it's this sort of evolving battle. But I think I really like having scripts which are this mix of procedural code and just one step that requires the agent of okay, the task is draft release notes, just have it invoked to draft release notes, and then deterministic logic takes over for the rest.
That's a really good point. And sorry, go ahead, Hugo.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, when you mentioned cron jobs before, Eleanor, I nearly jumped in and made my joke that, of course, cron jobs are so good, Dr. Dre called it his album The Chronic. But like the point Matt's making as well, that taking generative processes, agentic processes, and embedding them in larger workflows, parts of which may be deterministic, with guardrails, all of these types of things, the ability to do cron jobs as well. Once you have something generative, some sort of React loop, workflows and cron jobs, that is hooks as well. Like that is amazing, right? You have those 5 things and you can build so many wonderful things. And not everything needs to be generative is the point, right?
And that's something I really like with Hermes. He's very good at knowing when it's enough to have a script and when it should engage an LLM, which is, I don't want to sound like I have anything against OpenClaw, because I'm sure it, like in the 3 or 4 months since I last tried it, it probably improved so much. It's an amazing, huge community. But when I did use it, it wasn't so good at that. And so I create a lot of cron jobs all the time, and a lot of them I underspecify. I just say like, no, can you please do this like whatever every 2 hours? And it's really good at figuring out when it will need to do something deterministic and when it should engage an LLM, including if it needs to call an LLM from within the deterministic process. So that's something I really appreciate.
So we're going to have to wrap up in a second, Eleanor. Sure. There is a wonderful question just around what your stack is, more generally.
My stack, for coding, or
or for building, for software. What do you use?
So for coding, I primarily use Codex now. I really love the new app. I think it's good, and I love GPT 5.5. I think it's unrivaled really currently. It's very fast moving, so I use that a lot. It's changing. I don't use an editor, an IDE so much anymore. I used to do a lot of work from within VS Code, and at some point I realized I just kind of instinctively open it, but I never edit files directly, and kind of moved away from that. And I still look at files, but the editor needs are not big, so I'm kind of experimenting with Z for a slightly lighter option for the one-off cases where I need to open something. I use Warp Terminal. It's really nice, and now it's open source. I held off on using it while it was closed, but now that they opened, I started using it, and it's really great for running agents and just for convenience. In terms of languages, I became agnostic, right? So I was like, for decades, I was all in on Python. It's the only thing I wanted to do. And now I don't care. I use TypeScript, I use Go, I use Rust, I use whatever. Like, I don't really care if it works. Again, the verification for me is not about looking at the code. Verification is that it actually do what it needs to do. So as far as I'm concerned, if it's written in like PHP in continuation passing style, but it produces the right results, that's fine with me. So it became a lot more varied than it used to be. I actually find that I use Python less than I did before, because it seems to be a bit harder to work with agents in Python. And so for writing code by hand, I would still instinctively always go to Python, but that just happens very rarely.
Makes a lot of sense. And I also, it's interesting to say you're almost exclusively using Codex at the moment, because I think even a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a bit longer, you were definitely using Open Code a lot as well.
Yeah, I love Open Code, but something with a new Codex app is just especially good. It's kind of best in class, feels to me. And awesome. Yeah, but I'm changing a lot. I used Open Code, I use Copilot. I still do use these things, and I try intentionally to be a little bit tool agnostic, to switch around, to make sure that my configuration will always work with all the different tools, that I'm not relying on some specific feature of a tool. That's very important to me. But yeah, that's just a snapshot of what I'm currently doing.
It's actually also really several things are interesting. The whole thing that got me chatting with Wes McKinney again late last year was when he wrote like Python agent ergonomics aren't fantastic, which is why I'm writing or getting agents to write in all these other languages. But I am actually, so Nico, who's going to join us soon from AMP, we just decided to teach a workshop. I'll try to share my screen. I wonder if this will work. Advertising break here. And I wonder if this will work. How to build a coding agent. And we're going to use TypeScript and Py. And I know nothing about TypeScript, and I'm really like I've used Python for so long, and I teach a lot in Python and run a lot of workshops on Python. And initially I was like, oh, we're going to use TypeScript, and he was like, yeah, man, it's cool. Let's jump in and do it. So I'll share that in Discord in a second. We've got a podcast before that live podcast we just decided to do though called Coding Agents Are Dead. And I love that we get to do a podcast called Coding Agents Are Dead and then a workshop on how to build a coding agent as well. That's going to be a lot of fun. But of course, the statement is that coding agents are changing so much due to how the models are changing. So what they've done at AMP and really had to do was rip out so much of their harness and rebuild it from scratch with the new models. I will just share a couple more things. Now I'm screen sharing. Okay. Now I'm screen sharing and stop screen sharing. I'll share a couple more things that popped up in my mind when we were chatting. First is, and this is the first time I'm sharing this outside friends. Speaking of taste and design, I actually pretty much vibe coded a website for this series the other day. And so I'll share that in Discord, but anyone who wants to stay up to date with everything we're doing here can check this out. The other thing, when you mentioned YouTube, and yeah, the fact that they don't have an API as a user is annoying, but what I've been able to do is, and I'll share these at some point once they're a bit more robust, but build a set of skills which takes from the transcript and the video of each of these live streams, and with my input creates kind of a detailed summary of people's workflows, and actually goes to YouTube and does screen grabs to find things and gets the links, gets timestamps and that type of stuff. So this is one from last week of Hilary Mason, she was inspired by Night Shift, which if you don't know Night Shift, super cool, uses extra tokens for the things like maintenance stuff that you're supposed to be doing. But she decided she wanted to use it at the end of the week for extra tokens to get a whole bunch of agents to implement and critique bad ideas. So there are 3 default personalities. She has a chaos agent, perfectionist, and an end user who don't write a design doc each. They write design docs together, pitch and critique each other, and then they're aspirationally very mid, and on Mondays she comes in and sees what they have for her. So that's a lot of fun to do as well with these transcripts. That also, no, I'm not going to go there. So thank you very much, Eleanor. Really exciting to see everything you're up to. And also, when's the next cohort of your course? I just want to say I've learned so much from Eleanor about building with AI that I do encourage everyone to check out her course, look at the landing page, see if it's a fit, and check out her content around it as well.
Thanks, Hugo. Yeah, so the next cohort starts on June 22nd. It changed quite a lot in the previous cohort, in that the focus moved a lot more into agentic engineering. Feedback was really great, so it's more or less going to be the same every time. It's refreshed a little bit because this field is moving so fast, but if you're interested, go take a look.
Awesome. And I have one video we created for you. This one is one of the strangest, I feel, but C-Dance definitely, I love the screenshot.
The ultimate agent inception, driving Hermes from Codex over the phone, of course. Or any other agent, Copilot, Claude, Warp, etc. is that I weaken error skill and next problem skill. Hydra never even yard with the skill.
So I love how it just decided to hallucinate and just say skill several times, which feels apt.
Very cool.
And I think the best way to introduce Vincent is how I first met him, which was in a ball pit.
The thing that I like about this is the notebook comes less of a coding environment and more of a canvas.
So Vincent actually said that, but the cadence in that, the reason I used the subtitles is because it made no sense, right? It's the cadence there made it actually sound like so. But, and I just linked to this. Someone asked about your Lego philosophy. So I linked to our recent podcast, but what you've been doing, Vincent, with thinking through and building how a notebook can be a canvas that a human and an agent can collaborate on, I think is kind of a wonderful way to introduce you. And everyone, Vincent, engineer at Marimo, has worked with Matt and Ines on spaCy, has worked with our wonderful friends at Rasa, and Alan will be joining soon as well. But yeah, really thinking through very creatively about how we interact with these systems differently now, right?
I mean, I guess you could say that. I'm opening up a few things so people who are watching know what we're actually talking about, because otherwise this is kind of vague and abstract. So I'm going to hit the share screen thing, open up an entire screen, and then I'm going to go here. So this is a library called Wiggly Stuff. It's all this wiggly stuff that you can put in a notebook because Python notebooks got a whole lot better. Not just because, I work for a company called Marimo, and Marimo is great, but it's also because we actually have good widgets now, such that you can click that with your Python code. So if you want to have something that can do 3D, we totally have a widget for that. If you want to do something with graphs, we have a nice graph widget. And, I maintain this library on the side that basically has all of these widgets that are like suspiciously useful, and it feels weird that people are sleeping on this. Another thing that I'm showing right now is that these widgets will also host on notebooks that are running fully in WASM, so like you don't even have to download anything in order to get this stuff to work. But yeah, the really nice philosophy with this Wiggly Stuff library is it's just a Lego brick, and you can click it together with the rest of your code. And another thing that I also do in this library is that every single widget, the docs are also fully available in Markdown as well on the site. So if you have an agent that needs to know how to add this to a Jupyter notebook or a Marimo notebook or what have you, the docs can just get you here. And if you go to Wiggly Stuff, there's an LLMs.txt. I have found that also tools like, I think it's called xc.dev. It's a search engine that Open Code uses. That also, when it goes to a documentation page, first looks for LLMs.txt. So Open Code should also be able to figure out how this library works and how the Lego bricks click together if it were. So that's definitely something that, and this page loaded. So you can see I've got this very fancy thing. I'm able to zoom in. And whenever I zoom in, I can also have Python code update on the side. So you can see over here that as I'm zooming in, a cell down below over here updates. So, we can really look at the notebook more like a canvas, and that's, I think, where the quote came from, than before, because it's definitely more about having agents be able to interact with something that you yourself can also interact with.
Really cool. And so what got you working on all of this stuff? What was the inspiration?
I mean, I just came across any widget, and it always felt like the thing that that was missing inside of my notebook was a lack of interactivity. It was like 3 years ago. I just always noticed that, it's cool that I can run a cell, but then I get this image, and the image is barely interactive, and I could write my own D3 thing around it, but it doesn't necessarily click the way that I would like it to. There's not a convenient bridge between Python and JavaScript land, I should say. And then there's this guy called Trevor who made this specification called AnyWidget, and this will work in every single Python notebook. And, I got to meet Trevor, and we started hanging out. We're colleagues now. And, as part of my work is what I do over at Marimo is I try to convince people how useful Marimo is. And some of that demos really well if you have a library of widgets attached to your work. So it's definitely also work-related, what I'm doing here. But it's also this just phenomenon that I like having interactivity. If I want to... the whole point of a notebook is that I eventually understand something, and that's not something the agent can do for me. I have to figure out some way of understanding. And interactivity leads to play, which also lets you really poke at the problem from a different direction compared to just having a static script in a file somewhere that can maybe make a chart, which is cool. But if the chart is also interactive, you tend to learn way quicker.
And also, it takes it further along the spectrum to a video game.
Yeah, I mean, we did that demo last week as well. So I actually have this one. I made a new demo just the other day. Let me just show you that one. Yeah, so it's this thing. So, you know Microsoft Paint, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I made a widget that's very much like Microsoft Paint, but it's something that you could use from inside of a notebook. And normally what you would do is you would draw something, and then that's an image that you can pass off to an LLM or to something generative, and you can do something fun with it. One thing I noticed was like, oh yeah, that image actually lives in the front end. So what I could also do is have a timer, and like every second, Python is going to draw some flowers over black pixels that it sees, and this is something you can totally do interactive, right? And this is an interaction between Python backend is communicating with like front end in an asynchronous manner. So that's pretty cool. But this is kind of lame. Like, who wants to draw flowers? What you could also do.
You're Dutch.
Oh, sure. And my family has like a tulip farm, but
do they actually?
Yeah, no, they do.
Okay, I thought that was because you're like, I want to live in a windmill and where. I mean.
Oh, I don't want to live in a windmill.
No, but you okay, no. I mean, you say things like that though.
Yeah, I do make jokes about the fact that I'm Dutch and that I smoke a legalized substance whenever I'm able to. But in this particular case, you can also play the game of life. So I can set the fade to be like really low, and you can have these little squigglies sort of play around. But notice that I'm able to interact with the game of life here. And one thing you can do is you're gonna notice if I draw a straight line, then a lot of life starts to appear. But if I just draw an arc, it's going to be less life. Okay, why is that? And if you understand, you're going to understand the game of life way better. And there's also a fancy button, so I can sort of make this grow like mold a little bit more. Like it's going to be less fadey, if it were. But again, why does this work? It's a bit of Python and a bit of backend, and agents can read the entire docs of this thing very easily. So whipping this together, it allows me to dream a bit more, so to say, having these widgets.
Yeah, beautiful. And it does, I mean, it makes computation playful as well, right?
That, but also if the agent wants to explain something to me and there's like multiple steps, something about reading the code and being able to change the code to see what happens makes me better at understanding the thing than if I were just to read it from a book. Right? And there's lots of good books, and they definitely have a place, and they're great. But like a similar thing, because people were talking about flashcards before. So this is the flashcard app that I made and use. So I made it very hard to forget. So it's called remember.cards, and it's free, so people can go ahead and play with it. But as one does, you're going to try to figure out if an LLM can make these flashcards for you, right? So one of the things that I want to learn is how to say thank you in every single language. So in Swedish, it's tak, and in Danish, it's also tak. And in Romanian, it's the coolest thing ever. It's mulțumesc, which I just think is kind of like the coolest sounding way to say thank you.
That is cool.
But then I figured, okay, the LLM should generate these flashcards for me. And it's quite impressive, right? Because you can just ask it, like, make all these cards for all these different languages. So it made it for Danish, it made it for Swedish, it made it for Romanian. But you know what card it also made? The first card of the entire deck was, how do you say thank you in English? And you would flip the card and it would say thank you. But but the LLM has no way of understanding that's a useless card to have, right? It would just add that to the deck. And that's a perfect example for me where the LLM can do thinking, but it cannot do understanding. So that's still something I need to do. And that's also why I very much, because the goal is that I understand something, writing flashcards, I tend to do that by hand still, because that helps me also remember better. And that's the goal that I've got. I don't have a goal of having as many flashcards as possible in my deck. No, I want that to be in my mind. So that's also one of those things where, sure, the LLM might be able to make an app for you, but if I want to understand the game of life a bit better, it's also about how you use the agent, if it were. That tends to matter a whole lot too. And for that, I prefer to have something of a canvas that also gives me feedback than if I were just to passively sit here and watch content and pretend that that's something that actually teaches me anything.
It's so interesting. So in our course, Building with AI course alumni meetup last week, someone was talking about how they listen to a lot of podcasts, watch a lot of videos, and feel like they're learning a lot, but don't have enough time for practice. And there needs to be, you need to make space for that, right? And there needs to be a happy medium. And I do, so one example I gave, and I mentioned this in Discord, and we've been chatting about it this week. I heard about some college kids in the US who, when they're in a physics class and their professor is writing up equations, and they'll have Claude Code open, and while listening to the professor, they'll be simulating it, the equation, and seeing it, perhaps listening to it afterwards. And I think the ability to interact quickly with ideas, as long as you give yourself agency, can be really powerful with agentic systems. Does that make sense?
I agree. The only thing that I do think is missing from that equation is it is also good to be able to start from scratch yourself. Like there's something very empowering where you can just sort of say, screw it, I'm just building this from scratch, and that you're able to do that both mentally and like in your fingers, so to say. So that is something I do recommend people do, because there is a risk of intellectual laziness if you just have the LLM really do everything, right?
And in fact, something you said on our podcast recently was, you gave several reasons, but one reason maybe sometimes it's good to use a slightly dumber LLM is you don't trust it, and you don't outsource so much of your own cognitive ability to it.
So sometimes, I have noticed that sometimes, quote unquote, using the best model out there, it does lead you to take a little bit more of a back burner seat and sort of go like, oh yeah, the LLM will probably figure it out. Whereas if you use a worse model, besides the fact that it's like actually a whole lot quicker usually, you have to be on your toes a little bit more. And that also means you're in the loop more, because if there's a delay of like a minute, you're going to do something else. And if you're not doing, and it could be that you're not, some people make the joke of like, oh, I'll just go on Twitter then, and like you'll spend your time uselessly. You could also try to do something useful in that 1 minute, but then, it's like context switching all the time, which can be very tiring. So to me, having a quote unquote dumb model, but one that's really quick, that definitely is something that can really help.
Totally. And so what you just showed us, I don't know whether it was a response to my intro or it's what you were intending on showing us, or if you want to show us some other things as well.
Right. So a lot of people ask me about my setup for like, Vincent, how do you make these widgets? And one thing is, I definitely do a lot of things with coding agents. I like to use this thing called Conductor. And there's other apps like it. And also, just full disclaimer, I do have something of a working relationship with these people. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt. But in the end, this is just a wrapper around Codex or Claude, or nowadays they also have a terminal here, so you can also use whatever coding agent you want from the terminal. But the thing that's just kind of nice about the whole setup is I can open up a new conversation. This is going to start up a new workspace. And what I can do is it's a small thing, but it makes a lot of difference. I can actually script this conductor.json thing. Let me try to zoom in on that. So you can say like when a workspace sets up, I want you to run this one install command, and that means that all the things that you need in order to bootstrap that's there. But then there's also this run command, and this is going to run all the notebooks that are in my demos folder. So I can just hit run, and it's going to automatically open up the browser to see all the notebooks that I have that have all the demos of this library. And whenever it's done an iteration, I can just open the notebook and see if it did the right thing. And it's like a little thing that's just always there, and I don't have to think about setting this up. That's definitely very helpful. And another thing that I think tends to help as well is, I have a Claude.md file, as one does, and there's some skills maybe as well. But one thing about Wiggly Stuff that's really cool is there's tons of like widgets already there that serve as an example. So what I've just noticed is what Claude will do is if I give it a command to make a specific widget, it will just look for similar widgets. It will just see the way that I like things to be, and it will just follow that. And one lesson here is that this particular library lends itself very well because it's so componentized. And again, it's about building Lego bricks. And if you have a library full of Lego bricks that have this rule on how things should click together, it's a lot easier for Claude or whatever agent to figure out what the next Lego brick should be, because there's examples to follow. And this is also why it's really good at making scikit-learn components. It can just look at existing scikit-learn components and just add a new one.
Feels like, pipeline, it feels like Unix philosophy, right?
Yep, pretty much. And also it's easy to test this way, but if you have a library that you can get into this mold, that will do more than any scale file, I think, because you get into the situation where the LLM can just fix its own problems. And with that, there's this one thing that I really want to show, so I'm going to move towards that, because there's still this story about like sandboxing and things you could do with notebooks and like all of that. So what I'm just going to go ahead and do is let us try to do that in the cloud. Actually, it was a bug yesterday, so let's do that locally. Actually, might be better. So I'm just gonna this is a shortcut command. I'm just gonna start a new notebook right from here. So one thing that you can do is you can now pair a notebook with an agent. And let me use OpenCode for this. So there we go. And then
this is using marimo pair, right?
Yes, so this is the new marimo pair thing. It's effectively a skill that opens up a sort of scratch pad that Claude can write into the notebook, and that scratch pad also has access to all the variables that are in here. So,
well, I think you know this, but Eric Ma came and showed marimo pair. He was for EDA stuff. Yeah,
no, he definitely is a fan. That's definitely true. But I'm gonna show you something that you can do on top of this. So the first thing I just want to show is that this even works in the first place. So let's just add a slider here. Very basic slider equals, and then I could do something like slider here. Slider dot value that oh, it was a comma missing. Let's put that there. So there's a slider here, and you can see the slider value. Yeah, okay, so I now see a pill open up on top over here, ready to pair. Let us build something fun together. That's something that this agent over here wrote. And, you know, what is the value of the slider? That's something I can ask. And the reason that I'm asking this question is I want to really show you that this coding agent, and you can do this with Claude, you can do this with Codex, you can do this with whatever, slider value is 3. It can read every single Python variable here, but you can also ask it to interact with UI elements. So set the slider to, I don't know, 5. I'm going to not touch the keyboard anymore. And you should see the slider jump any moment now. I made a syntax error, fine. It's KMK 2.5, it's maybe not the best model. It's going to try to do it now. Click, and now I just moved. So we now have this canvas, if you will, where you can still write Python if you want to still manually tweak around. You can inspect the variables, so can the agent, and the agent can also make changes, not just the add Python variables, but can also read the Python variables. And that's like the biggest thing you can do to help the agent debug what's going on. Because there's way less of a, oh, I got to print something to the command line now. Oh, there's like a 5-step pipeline. Let me print all those separate steps to figure out what the column names are. Like all of those things basically go away because you just have a way to give Claude or whatever access to every single Python variable. And that really lets it fix its own problems way better than anything you can print to the command line effectively. Another fun thing that you can do now, and that's something we're experimenting with, you know how objects have this representation? Mm-hmm. I mean, you could also imagine that this becomes like the instruction manual for the agent on how to actually work with this variable if you have very custom objects. So you could put like API docs maybe in here as well. Wouldn't be that much of a stretch.
You could prompt inject people with it.
I mean, okay. And
just imagine doing that through the wrapper.
Well, and for that, there's like one thing I'm currently working on. It's not done yet, but I'm in this library for Pi. And what I just showed you, this whole like pairing with an agent thing, we have this thing called MoLab. It's currently being worked on, so I'd prefer not to demo that right now. But you can also use a sandbox on MoLab and connect to that instead. So all the code will actually be running in the cloud in the sandbox for you. Mm. And that's really cool. But then what you would also want is that all the, and you can connect any local agent from the terminal with it, but you would still want your agent not to touch any files locally, and that the scale file that you have, that hasn't been tampered with. And then there's something like pretty darn cool that you could do with Pi, because with Pi, you can actually, let me open it up on a slightly larger screen. So with Pi, you can actually, because it's TypeScript, that means it's JavaScript, instead of having this, then that, you would do what you would do in Python, you can just listen to an event. And Pi has an event called, hey, a tool call is happening. And then you can say, oh, if the tool call is of type read, then you can say you're only allowed to read the marimo pair files because everything else has to happen in the cloud. Those are the only files you're locally allowed to read. And you could also add some stuff there like, oh, and that file needs to have this particular hash. You can really narrow down what Pi is allowed to touch. And then you suddenly have a custom agent that is really bespoke to having something run in a marimo sandbox in the cloud somewhere. And that is super exciting, I think. Not just because you can also, you know, add a cute little moss ball as a mascot when the thing starts up. Like that's also really cool with Pi. You can customize it, the UI pretty easily. But the fact that you can also really put safeguards in there, that's also pretty darn cool. And a thing that I'm also working on is stuff like, oh, you just wrote a notebook. Can you quiz me on it so I understand what's actually happening there? So you don't like move way too quick and do the laziness thing. The fact that you're able to build things like that, I think is also really exciting.
Super cool. And if people wanted to play around with this, where you say MoLab's being worked on currently,
Yeah, well, so we're gonna announce something in the next 2 weeks, and I'm on a specific version of MoLab that has like a fancy thing in there. So I can't say too much about that, besides the fact that it's gonna be super cool. We're gonna announce it in I think 2 weeks. But molab.marimo.io, you can go there, and that's where you get all these sandboxes. It's like Colab, but it uses Marimo. That's the way to think about it. And then if people are interested in Wiggly Stuff, yeah. Annoyingly, I did pick a name that sounds like a Pokemon. So the moment you type in Wiggly Stuff, you're gonna get this pink Japanese animal. But Wiggly Stuff, if you GitHub, then you're going to find this repository, at least hopefully. And this will have all the widgets and all the notebooks you can play with to also explore that.
Because we have been talking about security concerns with respect to skills throughout this, well, today. I know that's something you've thought about with respect to Marimo skills, and having Pi in a sandbox has actually been a big unlock for that, hasn't it?
I mean, yes and no. So yes, it's an unlock, but it currently only really works when you're doing something in the cloud sandbox. Because if you want to use this trick locally, I mean, it's great that the only skill you can read is this file, but you still have Claude give access to like something that can actually read from disk from within the notebook. So this only works if you have a very proper sandbox at the moment. But yeah, I think Matt had a pretty good blog post a while ago. It was like we don't fear the apocalypse, we fear the clown apocalypse, where people just randomly start pulling in all sorts of files and skills, not check it out, and that's going to lead to all sorts of big problems, which I do sympathize with. The only thing I can say is like I maintain the Marimo skills, and I do my best to make sure that they, don't have any tomfoolery in them. But it remains a file, and it remains the fact that you give that to an agent. So be careful where you get that file from, and make sure it's not tampered with as you download it. So feel free to download it manually if you prefer.
Awesome. And I forgot to ask you the two questions I ask of every guest at the start. What do you love most about working with agents, Vincent?
I do like the fact that they allow me to dream during the day a bit differently. So if I have a brain fart, it's a lot easier for that brain fart to be satisfied within half an hour. And usually that artifact leads me to pursue something interesting down the line as well. So like that game of life thing is like a perfect example. It's sort of thing like, oh, wait, if I have that in the front end, could I maybe build something more interesting by having this asynchronous loop? And then, oh, actually, it does work. Okay, then I can maybe build the game of life. So the fact that an agent allows me to sort of quickly bootstrap things like that, that's like a huge creative unlock.
Totally agree. What do you find most frustrating? Oh, sorry, go on, please.
Well, so I think the main thing I find frustrating these days, and like, so you were talking about Hermes just now, right? Mm-hmm. So I've never used Hermes before, but like, okay, what I would like to learn is a Hermes agent. Can I please learn something about Hermes agent? Could I just have a calm video that explains to me what Hermes agent really is? And it's the hype around it that's causing this to happen. Like, I can't imagine this being like a normal video where I'm actually going to learn very calmly and like in a time respectful manner what Hermes is going to allow me to do. The hype around it, it's oh God, I just want normal, boring people to exchange notes. But instead you get all these, God, like, I don't know. There is something about the way that ideas are being shared where it almost feels like you have to pretend to be a guru instead of being like a boring person that just says, "Oh, I tried a bunch of stuff. It kind of works." Like that's
I want to be very clear. It's like algorithmically driven psyops that has been happening on social media for so long. But it's like like the stuff what happens to your visual cortex, what happens to your ears when you encounter that stuff. It's total. I mean, look at those things. Like I can't think straight when looking at those visuals.
Yeah, and there's okay, final story, because I see the next guest coming along and we should give them time too. Back in the 1800s, something similar was happening. It's like, now is the best time ever to sort of read up on your history books to see if there's something similar happening in a previous time. So back in the 1800s, there was a huge, like, we had the method of science. We knew how to do science stuff. We had statistics, but still we couldn't do everything. And one of the things we couldn't do was predict the weather. But boy, was there a demand to predict the weather. And it kind of felt like, with a little bit of alchemy, maybe we can actually predict the weather. So you had a couple of these people that guessed right a few times, and they were able to predict a very strong winner. And, they actually got known as being the people who could predict the weather. And again, demand was super high. And even though the supply was bullshit, oh boy, was there supply, because just demand was so high, such that even the alchemists and the quacks could actually go to market. And the most extreme example of this was there was this one guy who didn't just think, well, maybe one can predict the weather, but what if one could maybe cause the weather? And apparently there was this one dude who, there was a belief that like after a battle, it would rain, which tells you something about the climate in the area of Napoleon where battles would happen. So, but people believe that. So he thought like, oh, what if I go to Congress and actually buy like a ton of dynamite and I commission them to pay me money so I could make balloons go up in the sky and go boom there such that it would rain. And, and check, this is like one of those weird stories, but I think tech bros in the 1800s were way worse. So apparently there was this guy who was able to convince Congress to actually make it go boom up in the sky. But again, it's because the demand for something was so high that bullshit supply suddenly had like a reason to actually exist and survive for a bit there. But the only reason you could get out of that is by just doing the boring science. You would just check, does the thing work? Yes, no. And eventually we got better communication so people could actually exchange data with one another. And that's how we eventually got there. But we didn't get there by this intellectual laziness that I see on YouTube. You know, don't choose the life of imitation, but that's all that I'm seeing, it sometimes feels like. So I'm very proud. And we try to be like non-brain rot, but it doesn't feel like a lot of people are sort of following that rule set.
It's all, I mean, the Telegraph came in, was instrumental in the sharing of that data, right? And gave birth to like robust meteorology. And it meant information could travel faster than weather, which is actually important for meteorology to be able to exist. But then you get the internet and suddenly information's being shared it's far too easy to share absolutely everything.
The internet could use a good linter. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. But anyway, but also like for yourself, it's okay to go slow if it means you understand it better. And again, sometimes you want to follow the boring person, not the person with like the the ridiculous freaking thumbnail.
Totally, and hence everyone should check out Vincent's calm code as well.
Yep, still up. It's still up.
Keep calm. Look, I would love to welcome Nico and Paul to show us your agent skills. What's up, my friends? Great to see you both.
Yeah, how are you, man?
Super good. It's been such a fun session. Here, great to have you here. And Nico, you're tuning in from Munich?
Yeah.
And remind me where you are, Paul?
Yeah, I'm in Timișoara, Romania.
Amazing. So we're going to jump in with Nico first, and it was wonderful that Vincent showed Pi, because actually, Nico, before you joined, I shared the two live streams we have coming up. One for those joining, and you can find this in Discord, is Coding Agents Are Dead, and that will be a podcast live stream. The second one is called How to Build a Coding Agent. So I love that we're doing them in that order. But part of the message there, I mean, your team at AMP, and wonderful t-shirt, Nico, but had a great blog post called Coding Agents Are Dead. And of course, it isn't that they're dead, it's that they need to be reconfigured and redreamt and reimagined completely, given what's happening with models, right?
Yeah, it was really a play of the current iteration of coding agents, which is like what we use today, like Claude Code, Pi, as well, which is mostly like in the terminal, and it's running. And I think like it will move a lot into a different direction. And I think like a lot of products are already moving that way. Like Codex was probably the first, completely in the background, completely in the cloud. Warp is going the same direction, and I think us too. And I think like this is where more of the stuff will be moving. And then it's really interesting, like how will it evolve? It's like not editing and running locally anymore on your desktop. So the changes are completely somewhere else. And I think like this also makes something like review even more challenging. Like, how do you actually decide to really look at the changes? So am I pulling it down, and how do I make that flawless? So I think like the product becomes something way bigger, which actually has to cover more than just actually writing code, what coding agents currently do, but actually how do I integrate this into the entire software development lifecycle and include basically the steps before, like the design phase, and the steps after, the review, to actually make sure it's valid, which makes it a really much more encompassing and more interesting problem.
It's fascinating, and I can't wait to dive in both those live streams to everything you're working on with respect to that. So please do register everyone, or just check out the Luma event. Nico is a software engineer at SourceGraph, building AMP. He also writes about coding agents, software, and AI in production. And for this, and as we all know, for these live streams, I get CDANs to generate an 8-bit video of each of our guests. So let's see what Nico has in store for us.
The coding agent is kapoop. Long live the coding agent.
So Nico sent that to me beforehand, saying you got to show everyone this. Funnily, I tried to get Cdance to get Nico to sing "The Coding Agent is Dead," and that got flagged every single time. So we can have kaput, which was sloppified into kapoop, which I really like. But congrats on just being a Eurovision star, Nico, as well.
I want to hear you sing, Nico.
Yeah, I'm missing the German accent and the Schlager vibes. So a little bit more folky. I would have loved it.
Exactly. Okay, I appreciate your German honesty as well. And I'm going to iterate, man. That's what this is all about. But before we jump in, this is something I ask all our friends who join. What's something you love about working? What do you love most about working with agents?
The most, I think, for me, when I was writing code, most of the code quality didn't come from like the initial creation phase or the initial writing phase, but actually either way before, like actually sitting down, thinking through a problem and writing it out, or actually after I've written the code and edit over it again and again to actually improve the code. And I think like especially the second one is way easier now because you can get to a first version of the code way quicker and just throw something out there, look at it, and actually formulate why you don't like it. And the first one, the design, I think like actually using agents to explore and understand code bases is something that's really easy. What's really hard is actually understanding the business logic, the understanding and why it was written behind that. So I think like this is what's still really hard to do. And I think this is where the human element is still like most needed, actually understanding why something is done in a way. And I think like having a coding agents to assist with like just research and understanding and also like getting to a first version and then iterating and just going way quicker is.
I couldn't agree more. And I do think the initial bootstrapping is so important, and it helps you engage so much more quickly and not get just bogged down in boilerplate, right? Of course, we were discussing earlier though, you need to be mindful, like, most of my agent MDs when I start, I'm like, do not write tests. This is exploratory at the moment. Do not do this. Like, list out 5 things I don't want it to do. So that we can just like build a few things quickly, right?
Yeah, don't write tests. Don't care about backward or forward compatibility.
Exactly. I am also interested in what do you find most frustrating about working with agents?
So I think like GPT 5.5, one thing I'm hitting every day is like it allows to add these small helpers and wrapper functions where like inline code would be much more sensible. I think architecture-wise, they're also often having a hard time to like be able to correctly place the logic and what's the right abstraction level given the area of the code base or the function I'm in currently. And overall, it's getting harder to validate it because they are generating functioning code, which also looks correct, but which still can have a lot of edge cases or not be correct on the business logic or the specific constraints you have. So I think like these are my main 3.
And I mean, we were talking about this earlier with Eleanor and Matt Honnibal. I mean, we can't read all the code now, so we do need other ways to verify and test code, right?
Yeah, I think like you really have to like decide which parts of the code base matter a lot and which don't. I think for a lot of front-end stuff, for example, I don't care as much about code quality as I do, for example, in our core logic, which basically handles or like is on the hot path. So every single user is interacting with it. And it's like some like our CLI widgets or our front end, which is the settings page. Like it doesn't have to be the best code quality. So I don't have to do as much of a review in there. And it's rather like every now and then I'm probably doing a cleanup pass because I'm noticing, hey, this code is shit. I'm just gonna do like a pass over a few pages, improve it, and then be done. And I think like there's also something coding agents are really good at, like these small little tidyings or refactorings, which you can just rip out and improve it in one page manually by iterating with the agent and then tell it, hey, apply this to this 50 other components or pages.
So let's jump in. I'd love to see. Show us some. What do you want to show us today? How you're working with agents at the moment?
It's interesting at the moment. Can you see my screen? I've talked to you about it before. That at the moment the usage of coding agents is going down a bit, and we are working on a new system for AMP, which is basically a really fucked suited system problem. And it's really hard to get. Sorry?
Could you zoom in just a little bit?
Better? And it's pretty much
That's great.
pretty fucked distributed system problem. So what we always try to do is like, how can we get feedback loops basically in everything? And it's like, for us, we have a lot of stuff encoded in different skills. And one of them, for example, is just for G-Cloud, and which basically tells it like how to interact with it and what the different components in our systems are. So it actually can pull the logs based on what it is working on. And this especially for distributed systems, like we have our main engine, which is running in one place, the server, which is running another, which is doing the proxying. And then we have our like sandboxes, for example. And you need to be able to basically pull all these logs and aggregate it together to actually debug a single problem. And I think like these skills help it a lot because first of all, it shouldn't figure out all of it for every single thread it's running, to where the different pieces are running, what are the right services, is it in Cloud Run, is it in Kubernetes, but it should know this from a skill and just be able to pull it instantly, to basically speed it up and allow it to pull the log instantly and try to then reproduce or fix something locally. And I think this is something we are coming back to more and more again, like how can we make it as easy as possible for the agent to actually access the relevant data and then just let it crunch and use as much tokens as possible to just basically figure it out. Because usually the output gets better the more thinking the agent can actually spend on a problem, but it has to find all the relevant data. And this is something we do a lot. Like in our local code base, then we have stuff that's basically .amp in. And here it basically has all the locally running threads and their logs. So basically the server that is running locally, the engine that is running locally, but also the CLI that's running locally all produce different logs. And all of them are basically stored. And the agent knows about it from the root agents.md file. So when it actually tries to reproduce something, it can use logs pretty strategically by actually putting the logs in, trying to reproduce an issue, looking at the logs, whether it actually was able to reproduce it, and actually spin it up itself as well. So one of my favorite skills is like Tmux, and in there it basically can just, we tell it how to use Tmux correctly and spin up dev versions of AMP, like of our CLI in Tmux, and send text, do certain shortcuts, and then basically it can do that and look at the logs, see whether it reproduced it, and if not, iterate to actually find a problem, find a bug, and reproduce it first, and then actually produce a fix. And it's like a lot of these, like, how can we actually bring feedback loops into the agent, or actually ways to gather more data about a problem and get it into the flow of the agent so it actually can do a lot more stuff autonomously, what usually requires you to copy and paste stuff from different points.
This is incredible. And I think a lot of people may think of skills as something when a user says something, or a human says something to an agent, or does a slash command or whatever, it will then invoke a skill. But you're talking more about, background or autonomous agents here as well, right?
Yeah, it's like for us, a skill is more like capabilities we want to give to the agent, and it's usually like often something like a tool and how to use it in our code base. And it's like it can look up the documentation and has base knowledge about every single thing, like about Tmax, about G-Cloud, but it doesn't know about your specific setups, what services you have, or how to actually then use Tmax in the context of our CLI. And this is basically the additional information we just put in the skills. So it just doesn't have to waste tokens in the beginning to actually first figure out of how to actually use it, and fail first for like the first few turns, but actually have all of it in a context, like how to use it correctly, and then instantly basically move into focusing on the task at hand instead of how the tools work.
And will you essentially be using AMP amplified by all of these skills in order to rebuild AMP? Is that what we're talking about here, or?
Yeah. So it's like I have one example here on the side, which I actually wanted to pull up. It's slightly different. In this case, I was working on a focus problem. So focus.
And quickly, I've assumed that most people know what AMP is, and I think most people do. But I just saw AMP threads, which I think is such a wonderful part of the value prop of AMP. So maybe you could just quickly remind us what AMP is.
So AMP, basically, we are a coding agent, like Codex, Claude Code, but our main focus is basically enterprises and teams. So a lot of our functionality is actually around sharing threads or sharing conversations with your team. So they are all accessible for other people in your team as well. If you want to, you can set them private as well. So they are all in the web store as well, and other people can access it and refer to it. So one pattern we, for example, have a lot is that someone has done something, has done a fix in one thread, and I saw it and I actually realized, hey, I could apply this in something which I was working on as well. So I can just take the thread ID, give it to the agent and tell it, hey, there was a fix in there, apply the same fix to this file and just send it off. And it basically can pull all the data down it needs and ask questions about the thread and then basically continue and work on it. And Pi has something similar as well, but it's mostly like in code base. And for us, it's just basically enable that for your entire team, for your entire enterprise, to actually make it more useful across the entire team.
Awesome. So yeah, show us what you're doing with threads here.
Yeah. So this is one thread, which is a good example of how we actually try to add feedback loops. And I was working on a focus issue, and focus basically means in the CLI, which of the active widgets, so of the active UI on the screen, gets the keyboard input. Because with keyboard input, like you don't have a mouse pointer, which actually directs it to where it should go. So you have to basically have something like focus, which shares it, okay, hey, this element is in focus, so send the keyboard input there first. And if it doesn't handle it, basically you bubble up usually. And we had one issue that when we start up a new thread with continue, it pops up a picker of the different threads and it wouldn't focus correctly. And I basically gave it that problem. And what it then did in here, which is really interesting, is spawn up a Tmax pane and actually do the AMP threads continue in dev and actually reproduce the problem first, and then send the keys to actually look at, okay, what is the issue? And for this, like, it can reproduce it. Yes, this was like the first step, but it couldn't then figure out, okay, where is the focus actually to actually figure out what is the issue at hand? Like, why isn't the focus being set correctly? So what I did is I added like a focus inspector to the UI, where it can basically look at the focus tree. And then AMP vendor head basically spun up AMP again in a Tmax pane, spun it up and looked at the focus tree before, sent some keyboard shortcuts, looked at the focus tree again, and could basically see, hey, what is the problem at hand? And it basically realized, hey, the focus tree isn't being set correctly, so it isn't being returned. So it opens it in another in another parent or groups it incorrectly, and basically reproduced it, pushed a fix, tried it again in tmarks, whether it's correct now, and then basically was done with it. And I think like this is something you can do in a lot of cases. Just give feedback loops to the model, whether it's like storybooks, debug panes, like this, for example. Like give it a way to actually look at more information in a structured way. And you can do really cool shit with that. So it actually runs more automatic and it produces really correct code, which doesn't have to be make assumptions. Hey, this is probably the problem. So I'm gonna fix that. It can actually like figure out the root cause first and then produce a fix and then validate that it actually works.
It's the validation that I think is, I mean, all of it's clearly super important, but in order to let it be as autonomous as possible, making sure like it has a clear goal, like it's able to hill climb and go in that direction, right?
Yeah. And I think like this is one, like two sides of a problem, like validate that it actually works, but also validate that the assumption the model is making about what the problem is, if you give it a bug, is also correct. And I think in a lot of cases, this is the bigger issue, that the model assumes something is the problem, which isn't the root cause or which isn't the root problem, or maybe also is a red herring. So it just shows up downstream. And actually giving it the tools and thinking through, okay, what does the model actually need to figure out what the root cause is? And just adding that into your code base as tools or debugs panes or storybooks will get you to something that's better, quicker. And then it's more about, hey, is the code that's produced actually high quality? And is it in the right places? Some more of these design and architecture decisions. Which makes it easier because in the end, then it's more like you're eliminating one mistake the agent can make completely, and then you only have to care about other ones.
How many are there though? But no, there's a really interesting challenge here in that you're right. You want to be really specific with an agent, but yet you want to give it freedom to do its job as best as it can. How do you think about that tension between being specific, but also allowing it room to spread its wings?
It's, in the end, what we want to do is like, we want to give it primitives, which it can use to debug a wide range of issues. And it's like, we had a lot of focus issues basically in our old TUI, and I completely re-implemented it with the thought of actually give it better debug tools so it can actually figure it out across whatever focus issues you have. And this is more of like, hey, it has a tool at hand which it can use, but it doesn't have to. And it's very targeted to one group of errors we have often seen. And I think it's more for whenever you see an issue or a mistake the agent makes a lot. The first instinct is usually, hey, put it in an agents.md file. But I think like if it's a little bit more complex than that, it's like hard to basically give it a prompt or write it in a few lines, instructions of like how it should act in these cases. And it's often better to actually give it tools or ways where it can actually really debug it and figure out what's going on. And I think for that, having some like really primitive and easy to use debug tools help a lot. You shouldn't add that for every single thing. For most cases, it's probably not necessary. But for things which are actually like causing a lot of bugs in the code base or things that the agent is repeatedly doing wrong or producing shit code, I think they're really worth actually sitting down and thinking through it of what could I actually give the agents in terms of tools to actually improve in that specific area.
Makes a lot of sense. I have a couple more questions, but was there anything else you wanted to show us?
I have like a bunch of skills, which we can spend a little bit more time on this, or if you have
no. Well, this is the type of stuff we'll discuss in the podcast as well. So show us some skills, more skills.
It's like, yeah, this is a different one I have, which is basically a lot of my work is actually the tuning of the harness and the models and the tools to actually get the most out of them. And it's really interesting. The models actually got way better in the last year at introspection. So this is actually one skill which I have locally, only for me, which is basically just like analyze the threat.
I can still see Tmux.
That's odd. Me. Here it is. And
awesome.
This is basically a threat post-mortem, I call it. So every time when I actually have something weird happen in a thread or in an agent conversation, I actually sit down and try to have the agent analyze or introspect of why it actually did it. And the agents are surprisingly good at it. And a surprising amount of failures can be basically found because it's a wrong instruction. It has either in the system prompt, in the agents.mds, or in the tools, or in a file, which actually gave it wrong information or wrong instructions. And we had that happen a lot in our code base, where we actually just had outdated documentation in there. And I think like this is always worth like doing when you actually have something which didn't work. Actually try to figure out why didn't it work, and just like chat with the agent a bit, like why did it make the decisions it did, which you think are wrong. And I just have basically a skill for that, which are like a bunch of questions it should ask itself, how it should read the thread, and what are like the common causes of failures and the sources for it, and what it should do next. And this is like a lot of the like system prompt improvement and agents.md improvements I've done. And it's like it catches a surprising amount of mistakes in the instructions files, the agent, or in the context that you actually give the agent.
Amazing. And so what can you talk us through the rest of the skill as well, just so we can...
Yeah, so it's like, it's basically... Yeah, so what I basically ask, like I still use it usually within the thread. So you have a conversation with the agent and it does a mistake. So I basically ask it, okay, what are basically the instructions that you have in your context window that led you to making these decisions? And for me, these are basically the source, the system prompt, the tool definitions, the skills, the agents.md files, or the global agents.md files. And then I tell it to basically ask questions like which instruction caused this mistake? Was it a missing instruction, a conflicting one, an ambiguous one, or was it user specific, like what the user asked in his instruction? Or is the system prompt wrong, which is the biggest pain for me. Like I always want to get them out. And then I basically ask it to categorize it. Like, is it a steering issue, undue, repetition, confusion, wrong tool, missing context, under agentic or over agentic? And these are like common failure patterns we have seen in different agents, or I've seen. And then I just ask it to, hey, propose how to change the instructions, like whether to remove them, modify, or add new ones. And I basically tell it to always default to removing, because that's usually like agents always like to add new stuff instead of removing things. So this is their default tendency. So I just push against it to actually get it to remove bad instructions over actually adding new ones.
Super cool. Is there anything else? What else do you have in it?
What else do I have? It's like...
Oh, no, I mean in this skill. Is it, what else do you tell it below this?
Yeah, below this is basically just a pattern of like how to output it.
Okay.
So this is basically just like a structure of how to feed it to me.
Yep.
And how to basically present different things I want to add. Basically when I should add a new skill, and use when the knowledge is specialized, not always needed, and should be loaded on demand. Or like use when to do an agent.md change, and how to propose it in which format. So there's basically a bunch of different categories of suggestions it can make and how to do them. And actually when to do them.
How old school to get it in Markdown and not HTML? It's May 2026, Nico.
It's, man, I don't want to waste so much tokens.
Tell me about it. Well, that's the other thing. When we're talking about, writing skills or helping agents and figure out how to work with respect to particular models, sometimes, and we've talked about this on the show before, I mean, Wes McKinney on the first episode said, I wake up and wonder whether I'll get like smart Claude or dumb Claude. Like, how do you think about, the things you write and the instructions you give models and agents when the performance may vary or does?
I think we rarely have a dumb Claude ourselves. Like, I'm mostly using AMP to build AMP, and we are very careful with what we add to the system prompt, and also like how to add it, that we actually do a lot of validations before we do major changes. And my default is like in the skill, my default is to remove instructions rather to add them, because I think like the main failure pattern is because you have too many instructions, and there is a limited amount of instructions an agent can actually comply with. And when you overload the system prompt and the tools with it, it will fail to comply with some instructions. And we want actually to have as much instruction budget left over for the user as possible. So our system prompts are actually like really trimmed down in comparison to most of the other tools. And every line in the system prompt should actually have a clear behavior it is targeting. And if it doesn't, I'm going to rip it out. So we don't see a lot of performance variation because usually we are pretty confident that every line in the system prompt actually has a clear behavior we are targeting.
Super cool. So the workshop we're going to do next month, I'm really excited about, because we'll be building on top of Pi. And of course, famously, Pi's system prompt is so concise. It's probably less words than the ones I use to say that, but not quite. This is super interesting stuff, and I can't wait for our workshop on building these types of agents and our podcast as well, man. Thanks for coming us and showing us your agent skills.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited as well. I'm gonna do some prompt engineering for Mario. He's gonna be excited for sure.
Amazing. We should see if we can get him to pop along and say what's up. I just saw Alan from Rasa has joined the call. Everyone, Alan has many claims to fame, but one is he's been doing chatbots since before they were good.
Thanks for that, Hugo.
Alan has been building chatbots since 2016.
Yeah.
Rasa, is that when you started with Rasa? Started building Rasa?
Yeah. Rasa started 2016. I guess I started working on chatbots a year before that.
So Alan is actually going to show us in half an hour or so some really exciting creative uses of agents and skills that he's been working on. But before that, so excited to have Paul here. What's up, Paul?
Yeah. Hello, Ron. I'm super excited to be here as well. I'm good. Excited to show you my skills.
I can't wait. And Paul's joining from Romania. A few words of introduction. Paul's the author of the bestseller LM Engineer's Handbook, lead instructor of the Agentic AI engineering course, teaches AI engineering end to end, and his goal, one of his goals is to help others escape proof of concept purgatory, which I can really relate to. And for that reason, he created the Decoding AI magazine, which I encourage everyone to check out on Substack. And we actually met when I wrote some things for decoding ML and then decoding AI, and it's been such a pleasure to work with you on stuff there to help builders build more. I would love to show you the video we made using Cvance, which yours is I feel one of the stranger ones, but we'll see.
I wonder why.
Let's see, is it gonna...
Let's go! Let's go! From POC per Korea to shipping AI products that work.
So there we go. So it's slumbified purgatory to purgatoria, which I kind of like.
I never sang so good in my life, so that's great.
I mean, you've got a beautiful voice. It almost
no,
it makes
you don't want to hear me sing.
So as you know, we ask everyone a couple of questions before we get started. I'm just wondering what you love most about working with agents.
Yeah, I think that especially because at Decoding AI, we are a very small team where we have to experiment a lot. I love that it allows me, like, for the first time in my life, to write a ton of code, experiment with a ton of ideas, write a lot of articles, posts. So basically, it allows me like to go on to get my full potential, basically, because up to this point, time was a big issue for me to actually like building stuff, writing, creating content. So I never had time for all of this. And now I think it's an amazing time to be alive. And yeah, we have to wire our brains a lot to adapt to this new way of building things. But yeah, I think it's amazing.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think the ability to experiment, as you said, and then something in there to automate or some of the boring stuff as well, so we can actually be as creative as possible, right?
Yeah, that as well. Like, I think now I spend more time on my automations than doing them myself. Probably.
Well, that's the other thing as well. Like, I'm like, is this really up and to the right? If I'm there at like 3 a.m., Claudemaxxing with eight terminals open, and I'm like, yeah, I can improve this. I can improve this. I can be more productive.
I can do this.
Yeah,
and you're
exactly.
not sure if you're doing more good than bad.
Yeah, exactly. What do you find most frustrating about working with agents?
Yeah, especially because I use agents a lot for content creation and for coding as well. I think that the most frustrating part is this balance between how precise you need to be and how much freedom you should give them. And it depends, I think, also a lot on different tasks. For example, for coding, yeah, you need to be precise, but you don't need to be that precise because agents have seen a lot of code. So as long as you pin down the architectural decisions really well, they work to some extent. But for example, for writing and other things, always if you leave them too much interpretation and gaps, they like the LLM and AI voice immediately pops out, and you can see like these phrases that have no meaning, and they're just there to be there, just to comply with other word count requirements that you added, and so on and so forth. So hitting that sweet spot between, okay, how much input should they give it and how much they can do on their own is very frustrating, especially after like you waited an hour or so to get the test done and you see that it's crap.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it is very brittle. And that's why, and I mean, to Nico's point, they build their own harness around, frontier models. So they don't necessarily deal with the issues I do when working with Claude Code, where like something changes one day. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel the same, right? And the way I was working isn't quite working today. What's happening? I need to be far more vigilant.
Exactly, and you don't really have control over that. And that's why I'm also thinking at some point just going with open source models, because then you have like your own harness and you know that it works. But I think that you need resources to go that path, like to actually build everything and host your own models and all of that, because otherwise Claude Code and out-of-the-box systems are a lot more convenient in many ways, starting from money to time to everything you can think of.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to jump in and show us your agent skills, Paul.
Awesome. Yeah, let's do this. So controversially, I just assumed that you had a few agentic coding use cases so far. So I would like to show you my content creation and knowledge workflows.
I would love that.
Yeah. Just one sec. So I will just tell me if you can see my screen.
I can. It'd be great if you could zoom in a bit, if possible.
Yeah. I just switched to Z a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still figuring out how everything works, to be honest. But sure. Yeah, I think this is good enough. Okay, so I want to show you like two broad use cases. So I use Claude and my like second brain setup to also research a lot, and then also for writing. And in my use case, they have like connections between them, but they also have their independent steps, because research is a lot of exploration and so on and so forth. So basically for research, I build like a customized version of Karpathy's LLM knowledge base on top of my second brain. And everything is from scratch, because it's very coupled with my way of doing things, with my processes. And personally, I think that's where the magic is, because every knowledge base should be to some extent personalized on your own processes. So basically what I do is I want to show you an example. So here I'm actually researching how to write coding agents from scratch. So that's why Nico's talk was interesting to me. I'm not like an expert into that, but now I'm deep into the rabbit hole and in understanding how they work.
It's so much fun, isn't it? Because I'm not an expert, but that's why I love chatting with people like Nico and doing workshops. But it's amazing to start building these things from scratch and seeing how they behave and steer it and feel the vibe.
Yeah, exactly. And now I think that the best way to do is just to jump straight into the code. Like it's so much faster and so much more rewarding. For example, this is how my current state it looks like. So I have this basically this knowledge base here in this research coding agent from scratch. Maybe in Obsidian it looks better. Yeah, a lot better. Okay, and basically so far I ingested 2 repositories into this knowledge base. I have the Claude Code repository, don't tell this anyone, and Open Code repository. And basically by doing this, I can really quickly scan through the overall architecture, to the memory system, permission system, REPL, sandbox, or whatever makes sense to me and I want to dive deeper. So everything is personalized. I get like a log of the questions, of all the core entities inside these repositories, the core concepts, comparisons on how these tools actually do differently and things like this. And actually, I just want to show how this works. And today I wanted to start digging into the Pi harness and how it works, and I will just run this now, and maybe hopefully it will end by the end of my session. So I have this research skill. So basically I have this bunch of research skills where the core skill is called research. I will be honest with you, I was really lazy, and this is vibe coded. So the skill itself is vibe coded. I know it's probably not the best way to do things, but I don't have time to manually write this stuff, and I version everything, and usually I'm more like, okay, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I try to make it work, reduce, and then I kind of manually go into it and fix stuff only when things break, not when bootstrapping stuff. But yeah, up to this point, like,
I was just going to say, I do think, like, if things work and work over a variety of cases that are useful to one, and perhaps over different agents and different models, if you use them or want to share them. But in fact, also, at the bottom of a lot of skills I write, I do have an iterate clause, which is pretty much tells the agent, hey, after you run this, chat with Hugo about if there's anything we should improve on the skill as well. To just help you keep rolling.
Yeah, exactly. I personally think that you shouldn't fight LLMs. You should find new ways on how to get into some symbiosis with them, but this is just my point of view, I guess. So basically, I have this research skill that allows me like to ingest new data into the knowledge base and also like query it. So for example, for this repository, I can just say, I want to and I just need like to give it the path to my knowledge base. And the beautiful thing when you do this is because like if you already have like your logs of questions, you can just ask it like on top of and that's it. And probably after, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes, it depends on the repository, I will get like side-by-side comparison with this new harness and basically a deep dive into the repository itself, plus comparisons and concepts and all of this. So basically here are like cross-pollinated ideas, and here you go just into that particular repository. And next, if you also want it, like you can ingest stuff from on top of this repository. I can ingest stuff like from Obsidian itself, because Obsidian has a CLI. I also log everything that I read into Readwise and do highlights and notes, so it has access basically to my personal thoughts. And also I hooked it to Notebook LM, so usually when I want to do deep research on external resources that I'm not really aware about, I can plug that into as well. So basically I can just put a lot of context and have a very dynamic research process to understand topics. So yeah, this is basically my research phase. I also have like some adjacent skills on top of it. For example, like to distill the research, because as you can see here, the research is like a huge repository of files. But for example, for writing, I don't want to pass all of this into like my writing agent. And usually I have like my article sketch, and I ask an agent just to bring from all this wiki just the ideas that I actually covered into that article. So I compiled it into like a very distilled version of my research relevant to what I care about. And other like more research linked is like a skill to find errors into the, it's like an introspection skill, you know, to find errors into the wiki. For example, if some ideas are repeated, or there are some clashes into ideas, or it can extract more ideas and things like this. And for render, like to see some beautiful visualizations, which I haven't played that much with those, to be honest. Okay, so this is like in a nutshell my research process. If you have any questions, I will be more than happy to go over them, or I can move on to my writing process if not.
I would love to see your writing. I mean, I have so many questions actually, but I don't think now's the time. This is fascinating. So yeah, thank you for sharing this with us.
Yeah, it is, and it's still like a lot of work
also
in progress.
Just reading like the chain of thought coming through, like it feels. Remember when we all used to like train neural networks and just. I used to call it Zen and the art of watching the epics roll in, and it's the same with LLMs now. Just looking at their thoughts and seeing what they're doing. It's really interesting.
Yeah, you can learn a lot yourself out of this. Unfortunately, when you have like 8 terminals running in parallel, it's a bit harder.
Totally.
Yeah, so this is like my research phase. So for writing, I think this research is essential basically to anchor your writing into your research. And because I use this wiki with questions and everything is like a byproduct of my question and my thoughts, I think this is super powerful than just dumping some static files from the internet, right? Basically, then your articles will be anchored in your thought process and not in something super generic from the internet.
Totally.
And as for writing, just I prepare like a quick demo here. So I prepared this test. So my writing process kind of is split into multiple steps, and the core ones are I create an outline. This is like for an article that I'm working today, and I just quickly sketch something 5 minutes before this session, where basically here in the outline I like dump all my ideas about that piece in a particular order, and I mostly think about what I want to teach, how the ideas should be connected, the narrative of the piece, like the problem, the solution, basically the core of the article, which comes from me. I still put everything that should be talked about here. And the thing is, why is this super fast? Because these are more like references on what then should be bringed from the research, right? So I don't need to think about at all on how this would look like, on typos, on basically it takes me like 15 minutes to sketch this outline if the problem itself is clear to me after I do the research. And very often I do the research and outline in parallel. So basically when the research is done, the outline is almost done, or 90-80% there already. And then I have this, and then I have this process, this article guideline create skill, which takes my research, my wiki research, which is queryable, right, through the research skill. So basically the agent now can dynamically research the wiki as it needs. And I give it the outline, and then it creates this guideline, which is more or less, now that I spend more time on the system, it transformed into a plan for the article. So the intent of this is not necessarily to be human readable, is to be machine readable, like to contain all kinds of metadata that I want to put into the article, such as the what, why, who of the article, some ratios between theory and practice, the point of view, some special instructions for this, and the sections of the article. And here basically I take from the research and put into the outline everything that it's required to appear into the article. And because I don't really care about how it sounds, my core focus as this step is just to put the right thoughts, the right ideas into the right order. And that's everything I care about at this step, basically. So this is kind of contains both the research and the ideas into the right order. And after I create this, I have like a article create skill, which transforms this, compiles this into the human version of it, let's say, right? It cares a lot on how it sounds, on actually to be like very nice to read, to follow my voice on how I would do things and all that stuff. And let's also run this actually. All I have to do is just pass this directory, and it should pick it up. And
can you show us that skill? Are you able to show us some of it?
This skill actually uses a MCP server. It mostly tells it, hey, just pick the right stuff and call the MCP server, where I have it here.
Interesting.
So, and actually this repository is like my own marketplace of plugins and MCP servers that I use for writing. And actually it's exposed here. And I think that the most interesting part of it are how I created this, this connection. So basically I have a set of profiles where I basically explain how the final piece should look like, right? So it's every idea is very articulated. And as Nico said previously, I also have this constant struggle of how verbose you should be, like how many instructions you should actually put in there relative to extracting ideas from there, right? So basically this is like the domain knowledge. It ultimately is baked into markdown files. Here I have these shared profiles where everything, it's like content type dependent. They're just like good rules on how you actually want to write in your style. And then on top of this, I have this, like, for example, article specific profile where I bake things such as, just let me find, like I give super special instructions on, for example, the article guideline, what it contains, on the article structure, right? Because the structure of an article is super different than the structure of a LinkedIn post or note and things like this. And then into the introduction of the article. So basically I'm super specific on how I want to look an article, right? So this is an article, my type of article that I want to look like. It's very baked into my particular domain knowledge and things.
Yeah, but
things
we're
like
also
this.
seeing a lot of the things we all put in these prompts, which is bad now that we've like, not X, but Y, you know, these types of patterns. I have ones around, of course, M dashes and over-explaining things. One I got from Hamel was trust the reader's intelligence, which I think is a really interesting one. And another one is stopping it doing like staccato, 2 or 3 staccato sentences followed by a longer sentence, which is an AI smell as well. So
yeah, it's not perfect. Like it sometimes it does that, but the idea is that like these profiles are usually a living thing, and that's why it was super important for me like to find a way to plug them into my workflow. So whenever I for example, I have this skill that not here that whenever the LLM, the agent outputs an article, I keep a copy of the original version and then I do a diff on them and ask an LLM to interpret that diff and see actually what I corrected from it, what I didn't like from the article, and then create basically a plan of attack on how I could apply those corrections to my profiles. So after every article, I kind of apply this skill and try to find, okay, how can I improve my work? What rules do not apply anymore, or what rules apply now, and I should update my profiles. Because as you said, also those harnesses and LLMs on themselves are a living being and they constantly get updated. So I try as much as possible to find like data-driven ways to also keep my system on top of it updated as much as possible and as easy as possible. And to be honest, for me, it's impossible to do that manually all the time. Like I cannot keep up like to manually do all this stuff. And that's why I try to find like signals in what I do to one way or another optimize right my skills. It's similar like to a loss function that, hey, this is how I want to look like and this is the bud version. Do a diff between them and find what signal I can use to improve my skills instead of the model's weight.
So we have one question in the chat. Suren would love to know what your second brain stack is like. So he sees Zed, Obsidian. What else do you use for?
I try to keep it as simple as possible, but sometimes it's hard with so many tools around there. It's hard to pin them down. But basically, Obsidian is at my core. Zed is mostly I use it for coding and writing. So to be honest, I just jump around Obsidian and Zed however I feel like it more. But Obsidian is really good if you want to use it on your phone, on your iPad or whatever. It's more like platform independent, and the visuals are nicer and all of this. But to me, I often find myself, because I'm an engineer, just using Z more. So so basically you need Obsidian plus an IDE that you love and enjoy using. Z is great because it's super snappy, and now because I do almost everything agentically, the thing that I care most about is have like a minimalistic interface and everything to be snappy, fast, and yeah, and that's mostly it. And otherwise, I use Claude Code, as you can see, and also I use Readwise. So this is a way that I can like very easily. Actually, let me like quickly show. So it's a way that I can very easily ingest all type of information and keep like a to-do list, right? And I have a lot of here, and a lot of things here that I don't know if I will get ever a chance to read. But the beautiful part is that I have like my own repository here. And when I do the research, I actually have also a deep research algorithm on top of it that looks inside my Readwise repository and finds all the resources that I already read in the archive or I didn't read yet and put them here. So basically, I read them on demand. I just aggregate stuff here as I see something interesting on YouTube, LinkedIn, or whatever. And then when I actually have a project that I need to focus on, I do that deep research, and instead of looking all over the internet, which usually doesn't find good stuff, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, I usually treat this as a high signal resource. And also I have this RS feed where I have all kinds of feeds put here, where basically I create a living repository of everything, of resources that I trust and sources that I trust, that, okay, if you find something here, good to go. Let's just move on with this. So I think this is a missing piece that I haven't seen in many places, which kind of gives that special magic to this.
Yeah, super.
And
cool.
I'm not sponsored by Readwise.
So we'll need to wrap up in a second. I'm wondering have your workflows finished yet? Because if not, we can chat with Alan and then you can show us afterwards.
No, unfortunately, no. So
well, if you're able to stick around or come back or share them in Discord afterwards, I can give you the link for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I am in Discord, but I know I ran 2 workflows. So I have this deep research on Pi, which is not done yet, and this one, which of course on the demo it went rogue, and
it happens.
Somehow it wrote the article, or no. So this never happened to me. Yeah, this is the way. Okay.
Well, do feel free to stick around. If you need to pop off, we can figure out a way to share the results later as well.
Yeah, sure. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your second brain, your research workflows, and your content generation. I mean, that's the holy trinity as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, they're not yet there, but 80-90%, I think. I'm very bullish on this.
So I can't. Could you stop sharing your screen? Just a sec. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Here we are. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce the one, the only Dr. Alan Nichol. Until recently, I would have called him Hair Doctor because he lived in Germany, but he's back on the moors of Scotland. Alan is the co-founder and CTO of Rasa, been doing chatbots for over a decade. If that's not precocious enough, Alan has a PhD in machine learning from the illustrious University of Cambridge, and has built and delivered AI products to enterprise for over a decade. I've learned a lot from Alan. And the first time I met Alan, we worked on building chatbot education workshops for for people. And that was in the early days of Rasa, using Rasa and scikit-learn and spaCy, where we had to, really
pre-transformer.
Yeah, right.
No.
You had to use your own attention then, actually. But we have made a little video for Alan, as is our wont, and let's see what song Alan has for us today. The crowd goes wild.
Doing chatbots since 4 they were good.
Since 4 they were good. I love that it becomes Shakespearean, right?
I was doing one of these live streams, or maybe it was a talk at a meetup or something, and I was introduced as the founder of Rasa, the OG chatbot framework, which I had mixed emotions about. But I like that your video also turned the Rasa into retro on my T-shirt. That was spot on. I was going to ask Hugo how your energy levels were 2.5 hours into a 3-hour live stream, but you seem to be doing just fine.
Yeah, it is okay. For some, product placement, I'm not sponsored by Coca-Cola, but a bottle of Diet Coke is really...
A boy can
really
dream.
Helped. Funnily, though, it is... I've done, 4-hour live streams before. And we were chatting about this the other day, right? This is way more exhausting than a regular 4-hour live stream. I think because it's... high bandwidth, the amount of information, the amount
you got to pay attention. Yeah. I was watching, I was telling you this, I was watching the first episode and I was watching the stuff people were sharing, and I thought I was a power user of this stuff, and then I realized I am a little baby. I don't know anything. I was looking at these setups and this is so next level.
Wes McKinney's pretty, future music oriented, and I'm just happy he came out of what he calls the token mines to share what he's picking it away at down there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But there were lots of things you could have come and showed us today, but we've decided to get creative. I do want to ask you the couple of questions I like to ask everyone. What do you love about working with agents?
So I was thinking about it when I was tuning into the live stream earlier. And I think actually the whole arc of what I want to show is about what I love and what frustrates me about working with agents. But I think the straightforward answer is, I'm in a role, and I think many people are, where you do a lot of context switching, and I'm actually able to be productive and do something in the 20 minutes I have between meetings and quickly grabbing a cup of coffee, versus that just being dead time. So that's, the kind of project that would take me half a day, I can just fire off and just get done. And it just makes your whole day so much more productive. Then it can get a little addictive, and you can get distracted very easily with all your threads that you're pursuing in parallel. And then I think the thing that frustrates me most, man, is prompt and pray. For real. It's so frustrating when you don't have a systematic way to say, here's the thing I didn't like about the output. How can I achieve the output that I do want? Right? It's only trial and error. It's the only thing you have available to you. It reminds me a little bit of thinking about deep learning problems in sort of 2014, 2015, which I was also pretty bearish on. So, don't ever trust me to make predictions, but I didn't think the deep learning, because it was the same thing, right? You just come up with this neural net architecture, and then you don't have a systematic way to say, if I change this about the architecture, it's gonna give me a better output, right? You just sort of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what works. So that's a very frustrating aspect of it. But I have a lot of other frustrations too, so we can get into that. I think maybe another one I have is that I actually love working just on a piece of paper with a pen. And actually, if I really want to think about a problem, I get a stack of printer paper, I clear my desk, and I just sit and write things down, and I draw pictures and things like that. Right. For some reason, I don't even like it to be a bound notebook. That already frustrates me. It's just got to be a stack of printer paper. I don't know why.
Well, is this bloody good enough, mate? Like, what do you...
Yeah, I don't know. It looks like you're in kindergarten.
Yeah, well, looks like.
Yeah. And there's no good way to collaborate with your agent when you're writing on a piece of paper, right? And I actually find it very distracting to always have to work on the computer and to be thinking that like early thoughts by typing. It's just not. It's not a way. It doesn't create the right connection in my brain. So I guess I need like a permanent video feed down onto the paper that I'm drawing, and it can tune in with a multimodal model.
I'm just wondering if you can share your sticker. You can show us your prompt and pray sticker. Maybe do you have it on?
I want in my jacket pocket, I think, actually. Oh, but you know what? It's on my LinkedIn profile.
Oh, great! I'm going there. And Alan, will you still send anyone who really wants it, like in the mail?
Yeah, of course.
A prompt and pray sticker. Like, oh,
yeah,
dude,
sure.
That's so hectic. I love that. It's actually
we got a few good stickers. We got prompt and pray. We got a vibe coder one with like a person in one of those floating tubes. That looks that's very fun. And then we got another one that says we have Opus at home, and they're all great laptop stickers for people who are into this. There you go. The prompt and pray one. I go to conferences and I leave those on tables. Yeah. Actually, I put stickers as a skill on LinkedIn, and people have started endorsing me for it. So I'll take it.
Oh, you got endorsed for stickers?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that is
just by like randoms. People I don't know.
Yeah. That means it's a real endorsement, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Super cool. Should we jump in and
let's do it.
See some of your skills? We're gonna get designy and video-y, are we? Or
yeah, I thought maybe we just start with the output. So let me do that.
And so while you're doing that, I will just say, like, Alan could have come and shown any number of, enterprise AI, conversational AI skills that they use, and people use at Rasa and these types of things. But we decided to go with something that's nearest and dearest to his heart.
Yeah. And hold on. Okay.
I'll actually link to the essay we wrote for O'Reilly, which I think we called Prompt and Pray.
Yeah. We did. Cool. So yeah, I've been making some videos with Claude and Remotion and some skills. So Remotion is a JavaScript library for programmatically generating video. And so if you want to watch any of these, they're just like 1 minute long. I'll play one of them just so you get a sense of it. But they're just here at 2026.rasa.com. There's just a few of them. And for me, I think that the thesis that I'm fully like pilled on, subscribed to, choose your slang, is that everything that can be code will be code.
You're code pilled.
Because I'm code pilled. Yeah. Because the productivity gains from making something code and being able to work on it with a coding agent are so massive that I think nothing survives that. I think GUIs are just, I've always hated GUIs, like of all kind. I've never used an IDE because I just can't get out of the terminal because the GUI just annoys me. So for me, just the fact that everything's in code is fantastic. And I wanted to make some videos. I'm never going to learn like video editing software, right? So for me, the fact that I could do this via code and just credit where credit's due, it's not my idea originally to make videos programmatically. I didn't realize it was a possibility. It was actually Rod from our developer relations team who sort of seeded this and like made the first version of it and got me hooked on this stuff. So I'll play one of the videos just so you get a sense of the kinds of things I'm making, and then I think I'll talk a lot about like what I'm happy with and what I'm not happy with in the setup.
I'm Alan, co-founder at Rasa. We've built something that I think of as emergent personalization, agents that get to know your customers on their own. Ever since I built the first version of Rasa, memory meant a list of variables that you defined upfront, rigid, narrow, and you only got back exactly what you put in. We built something different. Memory your agent builds on its own, shared across every skill it has. It learns what matters across skills, channels, and conversations without you having to tell it what to look for. Over the course of a month, Sarah contacts her carrier for a few different reasons. Each time, the agent picks up on something new. It notices what matters and takes note. No single conversation told the agent what to do, but based on its memory, it proactively suggested a better plan for Sarah's family. The memory builds itself. You get clean abstractions to control how it's used.
So you're
And it
telling me you
works
built all
everywhere
of this.
Sarah shows up. Chatting, calling, using the app. It's an ongoing conversation with an agent that remembers her.
You built all of that with an agent from the command line.
Yep. Didn't touch a GUI. Wow,
Stat,
that. Yeah.
well, yeah, definitely future music.
Yeah. And like all the animated text and the graphics and the animation of the graphics and all that stuff, that's all just defined in Remotion. It's all just written in code. And so, I mean, that, you know, that's the point about this.
Is it AIU as well? Like all the face?
It's AI me as well. Yeah. The voice is really my audio, but then the video is generated.
Wild. Please, let's.
And the reason that I do it that way is because, again, I'm trying to squeeze in a bit of work between meetings and between like all the other context switching that I do throughout the day, right? And if I wanted to produce these, you know, I'd have to like set aside time, check that it's a good time of day, that I'm by a window and there's good lighting, and then it's all like, right, you gotta control the environment, and then if you have to re-record, you gotta find another day, carve out more time. This, I just record some audio into my computer, you know, quickly, like in a phone booth or something when I have a few minutes, and then it, you know, it can generate the rest. So, I mean, look, no one's going to watch those videos and think that they were done by Ridley Scott, but the fact that, you know, it's me solo and I'm able to produce them. And the other nice thing about working with an agent is that I'm having the conversation about the content and discussing the ideas while I'm generating it, right? So all the context about the actual refinement of what we want to show and what really makes sense, all of that is in there. Right, so you have a single collaborator, right? And I don't know if you've ever worked with a video collaborator, but typically when you work with someone on making a video, they're an expert creative person and they don't know your technical domain. So you're like, you're trying to say, well, this is the thing I'm trying to convey, but you have this sort of super collaborator that knows everything, right? That has the full picture, has the full context. It can be your sparring partner on the ideas. Say, you know what, maybe we can cut this whole scene because maybe that's actually a redundant idea. It's already obvious. Right. And so you can have these sort of macro conversations. So, I mean, I'll show the skill. So the interesting thing about the skill is that actually Claude needs no help whatsoever writing Remotion code. So it will just do it. And everything that's in this skill is me telling it like what I want in there and how to do animations and style guides and rules and text. So this is the interesting is that Claude has no taste when it comes to sort of like editing or visuals. And I think, you know, I haven't retried this with a design system from Claude Design. So, you know, again, I think the spatial reasoning leaves a lot to be desired. And I was laughing when you guys showed in the first episode, right, that you always have this like text overlapping with your data points and your curves. I mean, this is definitely a problem I still always get.
Of database.
Oh my God.
Brutal.
Oh my God. So okay. I mean, I'll just. I realized that my browser. I'd have to quit and restart to share my.
All right. Why don't? Oh, but you were just able to share.
Share my whole window. What?
Because you. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, do you want to? If you need to do that.
It's just a show. I mean, I'm wondering if we can get away with it somehow. You know what I can do? I can open the skill file in my browser, and then I can show a browser tab because I did that before. It has permission for that. So, right.
And look, in all honesty, I don't know if you are that far from Ridley Scott these days. You know, I'm my provocative take is he hasn't made a good movie since Thelma and Louise. So. That includes Gladiator.
Okay. All right. I think we're onto a winner here. Let me just share again, and I can just share that tab.
We have a winner.
Banging. There you go.
Dude.
Browsers, man. They can browse files too. Who knew? Yeah. So, okay. So very interestingly, I mean, this is actually an iteration of the skill that I've made since I produced that video that I showed you. But it's really about sort of conceptual design rules. So things like, look, it would do things like animate 3 different things on the screen at the same time. It's obviously very visually distracting, right? The way it would transition was always a slow fade in and a slow fade out. I don't know why. but it just made everything it just sucked all the energy out of everything, right? The other thing that I do is I've got I run Whisper on the audio so that I've got timestamps so that Claude knows exactly when the text is coming in, so it can, like, if it wants to pop up some text or an animation as I'm saying it, it figures out the timing on its own, right? That's also really nice. But so the really interesting thing about all of this is, because I don't know anything about video, I didn't even have the vocabulary to describe what it is I want to achieve, right? And I've learned a little bit of the vocabulary since then about, like, jump cuts, and I still don't know most of them, right? But, like, there's lots of vocabulary about, like, transitions and how to animate things and how to animate text and everything else. So there's a bunch of jargon in here that I don't even really particularly understand. And the other frustrating thing is I am 100% sure that if someone who knew a thing or two about video, if I got them to spend half a day refining this thing, I'm sure that, the results would be vastly, vastly better. But I mean, this is a broader topic that I care about as a builder of a platform that people use, which is, how do you let people interact with your product at whatever level of abstraction makes sense to them, right? So when I was first building these, I would just say, like, hey, can you make this a bit more high energy? Don't go full influencer, but just, it needs to pop a little bit, right? And just these sort of very vague subjective inputs. And then, Claude would kind of reason about, well, what makes a video feel that way, and what do I need to do, and how do I need to do that? And you know what? Maybe it is I need a quantic easing of a Bezier, whatever, right? Who knows what's going on in the background? And I think about that a lot for Rasa because, Rasa is a developer platform for building AI agents, and then we've always had a layer on top for the enterprise collaboration. And we would have these discussions internally because we had this no-code UI, and we would say, well, look, the no-code UI is actually, it's surfacing the same abstractions as the code base is to a different audience. So are we actually really making anything easier? We're just giving people a visual way to program with the same set of concepts. Do we need to invent, like, a higher level of abstraction that sits on top that, that people can operate in who aren't necessarily developers? And the amazing thing about interacting with natural language is you don't have to pick, like, the one size fits all, this is the abstraction you work at. Someone can come in and say, hey, can you make this agent friendlier? And that will, produce some output, right? Or someone could come in who's sort of been on the project for 12 months and knows it in detail, and could come in spearfishing with a very precise edit, and that will also be executed correctly, right? And so it's an extremely powerful thing. And so for us, we very clearly took the bet that, like, no code is out, no code is dead, and vibe code is in, right? Because you have a large number of potential collaborators on a large enterprise agent that's sort of customer facing. And it's not viable. It's not competitive in terms of time to value for all these people to learn some UI, learn your primitives, learn your concepts, learn how to reason about how they work together, piece them together, all this kind of stuff. It's just not competitive with the speed of somebody with a coding agent, just ripping through it, right? So the interesting thing becomes, how do you build the equivalent of a coding agent for someone who's not a coder? And the thing that they need is, a developer will look at diffs, they'll, like, work in branches happily, but how do you give someone who's just looking at a higher level of abstraction, how do you give them confidence, help them understand the changes that they've made, give them confidence in what they've done, and, help them reason about whether that's what they want, and then, test it and push it up for review, right? So anyway, I've just been thinking a lot about this as opening up levels of abstraction and freeing that up when you're building a platform as well. And so it's been good here. Something that I used to always do is, once a month I would just pick a new, like, framework or library that I didn't already know, and I would just learn to use it, because it would just get me in the beginner's mindset, right? Because it's very easy. Obviously I know Rasa very well, so I think everything's easy and obvious, but it's very good to get back in that beginner's mindset. But now, and this was a sort of equivalent thing where I'm in a domain that I don't know anything and I don't understand anything, but I can somehow be productive, which is very cool and exciting.
There are two things I'm really interested in there. One is, when you're learning new things, you use agents, you'll use Claude Code or whatever to learn?
Well, now, a lot of the time I won't bother to learn. I'll just do. Right?
Yeah.
Like I've never written a line of Remotion code by hand. I barely even look at it. I've kind of looked at it once or twice. It's kind of TypeScripty. Okay, cool. So I haven't learned Remotion at all. I actually don't. It's a pure vibe experience, by the original definition of you're not looking at the code, you're just looking at the output and just describing kind of what you want.
Ooh, so, yeah, but I suppose vibe coding isn't. Now we're realizing it isn't not looking at the code, right? It's.
Well, what do you think it is?
It's such a good question. When Wes McKinney doesn't look at code, I don't think he's vibe coding. I think he's doing some form of agentic engineering. So if you have really robust verification and tests so that you have deep confidence and evidence that the software works as intended, perhaps.
Yeah.
And if there are
so that's true.
robust engineering principles behind it.
Okay, so you're right. So the fact that I'm not looking at code doesn't mean that I'm vibe coding, but I am definitely vibe coding, and I'm not looking at the code because I really don't care about the code. I only care about the video and the output because no one else needs to run this code ever, right? It just needs to produce one nice looking video once. And something you talked about in earlier episodes of this show as well is you really need that verification loop. And anytime you're building with an agent, it's 100 times faster and more effective if you give it a way to inspect the output that it's produced and is it happy with that output.
Yep.
And that's difficult in this case because Claude doesn't have video as an input modality. And so there's, in this skill, it says, hey, go and render individual frames throughout this video and then take a look at those, which is good and it's helpful. But I would still say that sort of visual spatial reasoning is one of the weak points of Claude, and it doesn't do it particularly well. And it can often miss like really obvious layout issues or things like that. And then I have to really spell it out. Like, by the way, you have a little talking head segment here and it's way off in the corner and the text is in the opposite corner. And like this, the whole view is white space. What are you doing? Right. So I think that's something I would look forward to is stronger sort of spatial video reasoning. And I tried this as well with some of the Google models, which do have video input as a modality. And I uploaded some videos that I liked, and I said, describe in video editing terms what makes these good. To try and extract that information so that I could feed it into a prompt to make my videos good. It really didn't do a good job at all, right? It really wasn't able to capture and describe, which is surprising because you have these models that can produce kind of cinematic quality video in a way that's quite steerable, but you put the video in and you ask it to describe, give me the jargon for what's happening here, the transitions, the editing, the, whatever. And I wasn't able to get good output. So anyway,
I wonder if there are like reasoning, extraction prevention guardrails or something like that. They're like, we don't want Alan.
Yeah,
because that's the conversation.
Specifically Alan.
We don't want Alan from Rasa.
It's Hollywood getting in my way. That's the problem. Hollywood is scared of me.
This thing But something that's really important in what we're talking about, though, is the ability to turn judgment into machine intelligence, right?
Right.
And so the fact that at one point you were like, this doesn't look quite right, and chatted about it with Claude, and it was like, oh, there's some, I can't remember what term you used, but it's a Bezier curve or whatever it is, right? Have you figured out ways to encode more of your judgment into instructional memory or skills that the LLM can then act on?
I would say it's probably the biggest gap right now, and partly because I don't really have the vocabulary to understand what I like and what I don't like and what I would want to change about it. So I think if I knew more about videography, I would be able to give much more precise instructions. And then you see that as well, because when I'm using an agent for something that I understand very well, like agent architectures or building browser features or things like that, just the level of effectiveness is just vastly different, isn't it?
Totally. I am wondering if you want to bring up the skill again or just talk us through the different components of it.
Sure. We can take a look. So yeah, as I say, there's There's nothing about the syntax. It's just really about, what are the pieces, what are the typical layouts that I like to use. So in that memory video, you have the talking head on the left, and you have the animation happening on the right. The rules in here for things like, there should only be one thing that's the central focal point at any point in time. Your text that you're animating, that you show, shouldn't be repeating verbatim what I said. It should just, because that doesn't add any value, it just distracts, right? You just want to have like 1 or 2 keywords or something like that, or an animation you want to do sort of show, not tell, right? So here, for example, it's not about like abstract illustrations, right? And let's see. Yeah, it often will do kind of like very literal illustrations of the exact words that you're saying, which is, exactly not what you want, right? So you want it to be communicating at a level of abstraction. I would still say editing, transitions in editing and timing are difficult, because actually the time margins of time are tiny. So the difference between something that feels like a jump cut, like a TikTok style, almost interrupting yourself cut, and something that feels like it loses energy, I mean, it's milliseconds. And you have timestamps from Whisper, which are reasonably accurate, but not down to the few milliseconds between the word ending and it being cut off. And so maybe if you really watch that memory video carefully, if you watch any of them carefully, some words are like slightly cut off, or sometimes there's a tiny bit of dead air, also a technical word, right? Dead air. It's just quiet, just because
You're
getting
not the man
that.
I know with all these terms now.
All right, absolutely, getting that absolutely dead on. It's just very, very difficult, because there's not a lot of signal there, and it's really a kind of a human judgment thing at the moment. And again, these are not sort of production quality videos. I mean, if I were producing these, professionally with an agency, it would be like each one would be a multi-week project and would cost many thousands of dollars and that kind of thing, right? But I'm churning these out in a couple of afternoons, just to like share some ideas about Rasa that we're thinking about, or new features that we've built or something like that. So it's really like 100x reduction in cost to produce these things, to the point that like we just wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be doing it if I couldn't do it solo.
And also, I do think with the speed at which we're all building MVPs, trying out different ideas, that type of stuff, the ability to create videos like this in that amount of time frame with that amount of effort is going to become increasingly important, right?
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, that was sort of a deliberate thing. The way I used to do, and I've, you're gonna have to forgive me here, but as a fellow content creator, the way I used to think about sort of like thought leadership, right, is I would write like a big essay once or twice a year with like, really like a thesis, right, like well thought out stuff. And I just don't think the market rewards that right now. So I think it's better to have maybe a little bit less polish and less like, here's my grand theory of everything, because everything's changing all the time, and just like sharing little nuggets of insights and interesting ideas and features, and just like kind of more of a raw look in on the evolving thinking that happens inside of Rasa, so that people can, it's not so much about any individual feature you're talking about, but you're conveying more like, here's how we attack problems, here's how we think about things, here's sort of the vibe of Rasa and the ethos of how we do things. So yeah, there's stuff in here like canvas, safe areas, right? There's lots of stuff about like minimum font size. I don't know why it would always design the videos as if it were a slide. And so it would have, if it were maybe full screen projected, it would be an okay text size, but you want like text that, you want a couple words and you want really big fonts. Yeah, and then so they're distinct layout modes. So talking head on the side, content on the right, that's a classic one. There's a few of these. And then what I've tried to do, and I haven't done yet successfully, is I've tried to make a skill that will take this raw content and re-edit it as like short form vertical video, for TikTok, Reels, YouTube. And there's different rules, right? It's usually more like full screen talking head. You got to have the dynamic animated subtitles over the top. The illustrations tend to be more like an overlay on top of the face. You got to have the really aggressive like jump cut editing and stuff. And the idea was to sort of create a bunch of these videos and then create a batch of them that are sort of Reels appropriate or TikTok appropriate and upload them there. I haven't got them yet to a point that I think they're high enough quality to run that experiment, right? So anyway, open call. If anyone knows about this stuff and wants to help out and wants to do some consulting work, I will happily pay you to help me fix this and get these sort of ready for vertical video. Yeah, there's also stuff here.
HeyGen is what does the AI face, right?
Yes, and I will say that the video you saw there is from the V4 model. The new model is the V5, and it's considerably better.
Yeah.
And the V4 also had this weird quirk where anytime there was dead air or there was just no audio, I wasn't speaking, I was pausing between words. It's like base that it would return to was me doing like this face.
Amazing.
Which was like absolutely terrifying. And so I would have to like trim these videos aggressively, where again, sometimes I would have to cut off part of a word just because I had to like not show the frames with the terrifying sort of Chucky face going on. The new model doesn't do that as much. So so that's obviously very very good. Yeah. Okay, yeah, here to trim at exact word boundaries from transcript. This is a nice fantasy, but it's not really realistic. Yeah, typography, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, okay, easing
function. Yeah, see, I've got no idea what that means, but the agent clearly does. So
yeah, so easing means when you move a piece of text into a screen, you don't move it at a linear rate. Typically, you kind of move it fast, and then sometimes you even overshoot, and then you go back. And that's really what gives it personality. And these are all these little details that you never pay attention to if you're not a video editor, right?
Yeah.
But the like quantic easing is like, you know, fourth degree polynomial is apparently like a good way to slow down as you approach the final destination of a piece of text. So
fascinating, man.
Yeah.
Well, the amount you do learn here as well. You don't learn how to write Remotion code because that doesn't matter now, right? But you learn. I'm learning a bunch.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like if you ever see then like linear text like moving at a linear rate, then you realize it's like the DVD logo, you know, just sort of bouncing around the screen when the DVD is not playing.
Kind of miss
that. And it feels
man.
really strange. Yeah. Yeah. And like little details, right? So if you do have like a catchphrase, right? Or for example, in that video, I said emergent personalization, which is a sort of a compelling phrase. It's sort of part of the selling point of the video. It's cool to have the words emergent personalization show up as I'm saying them. But actually, the really cool thing is you want to do it just a hair before you say it. And that really makes it feel, you know, if that the video is leading and that it's exciting and your brain starts to engage with it. So all these little tricks that are sort of encoded in here about how to do this stuff. So
you're right. You're not really Scott. You're the ghost of Stanley Kubrick coming through content creation and TikTok and Claude Code.
There you go.
Claude Code Kubrick.
Yeah.
You thought The Shining was scary. Fascinating stuff, dude.
Yeah, it's a long skill. So I mean, we're publishing all of these, right? So if people want to play around.
Yeah, if you're that amazing.
Totally.
I love that. So everyone, please do check out the GitHub repository. This skill and many of the others will be there super soon. Give it a star because that's what we love.
That's the currency.
That's
your KPI.
Yeah, exactly. That's my own personal KPI. Who would have thought that employing myself, I'd be the most exploitative boss I've ever had? And I've had some, as you know. So.
I mean, we did some work together. I don't know.
No, but oh man, that was the good stuff. And I never considered you a boss because you are the boss.
Collaborators.
Yeah. I love it when someone fires you and they're like, "Yeah, this collaboration has to end." And you're like, "Just don't say that. Don't say that." Surin has said Alan's programmatic video workflow is fire emoji. Fantastic.
Wow. I'll take
Surin is curious about like how you organize your knowledge base or second brain stack, or like how you just have everything so you and an agent can work together.
Yeah, I'm not one of those. I'm not an organized person. I've like looked at Obsidian and things like that, I use Bear for note taking, and I have a new note per week of whatever the Monday is, and I just like write shit down in there, and I'm not like a filer or an organizer or whatever. So, if I need to think about a problem, or need to work on something new, my favorite thing is just to like create a quiet environment and just think really hard about it for a while. And
beautiful.
Yeah,
it's funny. So Vincent, who you missed by this much.
Oh no, I was tuned in. I was listening. I was just on the YouTube rather than the Riverside.
Oh, awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
When we did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, I was like, "What's a final thought for builders out there?" And he was like, "Be calm." He was like, "Be calm."
Oof.
Yeah, he was like, he actually said, he said, I can't remember an instance in which any creativity came from a place of serious stress. So, just figure out whatever. And he said, everyone has their own way of doing it. Figure it out for yourself. How can you get in touch with the calm in your life? And then build lots of cool stuff. Yeah. So do you have any final thoughts? What do you find good in your practice that you think builders should do more of?
I think just have fun.
Yeah.
Just have fun, man.
What a time to have fun. One issue is making decisions is really tough at the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
Like what to work on and what to have fun with.
Yeah. But just tinker and have fun. I mean, it's just the greatest.
Amazing. Well, thank you for coming and sharing that incredible future thinking workflow with us. If people do want to check out Rasa and Rasa skills and that type of stuff, what's a good place for them to?
I mean, just go check out the videos at 2026.rasa.com.
Yep.
And
great.
There's a few videos there, and like that'll send you to other links, and go check out more stuff about Rasa. And give me a shout if you have thoughts, if you like it, if you want to chat.
And I'm putting that link in the Discord. Man, thank you so much for coming and sharing it with us. And, we chat about all the fun stuff we're working on all the time. But it's really great to come and share it with other people.
Man, this is such a cool initiative. Shows you skills. I learned so much from the other videos I've been watching. So I think this can keep going forever because there's always going to be more people with more creative uses. That's
the thing. And I've got to think for myself, just like my brain is... Like I may have trouble sleeping the next few nights. Like there's so much. I've just like
good. Yeah.
I've just like had so much thrust into my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that having been said, we're doing this again next week. Next week's going to be wild. We have who do we have? We have Hamel Hussein is going to come and show us his AI eval skills. So I'll put that link in. I think it's in the YouTube, and now I'll put it. You can tell I've kind of lost the plot now. Usually I'm like, do this, do that, do it. I'm just like, bleh. So Hamel is going to come and show us his AI eval skills. Chris Fonsbeck, co-creator of PyMC, who currently he's done a lot of work in sabermetrics, which isn't the study of Star Wars lightsabers. It's baseball analytics. He's worked with the New York Yankees, with the Mets, currently with the Brewers.
Cool.
Doing a lot of like really interesting hierarchical modeling, a lot of like Bayesian stuff. And he's going to come and show us his Bayesian skills. And then we've got Doug Turnbull, who led search at Shopify and Reddit. He's the agentic search dude, and he's doing a lot of auto research with search stuff at the moment. So he's going to come and show us a bunch of that. So that should be a super fun one. But join us for that. And also, if you like these things, the best way you can support is like and subscribe and share it with a friend, right? Let's spread the word.
Let's do that.
All that having been said, we've had nearly 200 people join throughout, which is super awesome. And we've still got around 10. So for those who've stuck around or just joined to check it out, thank you so much. And in the famous or infamous words of Dr. Dre, we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, everyone.
And